Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became the Sea Dragon Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story at 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗺 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Third POV. Men aren't born equal. There will be some rising to fame and glory, undeserving of all of it, while others have hearts so pure but were left to die in the streets. That is what Izuku learned at a very young age. He learned that not everyone was born equal, since he has already experienced being treated as such. Because in this world, you are just as valuable as the powers that are bestowed upon you by the world. And when you are powerless, then you will be shunned out of society and be left to fend for yourself. It all happened 8 years ago with a doctor's visit. A visit that was going to change his life forever. It was the day that they get to learn what their quirk was going to be. He was 4 years old along with his twin sister Izumi. They both shared blonde hairs that was from their father, Toshinori Yagi, also known as All Might, and both had viridian eyes that matched their mother, Inko Yagi, also known as 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗺. Both their parents were heroes, and it was unknown by the children. It was early in the morning and the twins were excited. They were jumping around and giggling, much to their parents' joy. They both always wanted to be heroes and swore with each other that they both are going to be known as the best duo heroes ever. Now, kids, come on, eat your breakfast so that we could go to the doctor to have you both tested. Inko told his kids and they nodded. Hi. They both said in unison as they gulped the remaining food on their plates. Now, go change your clothes and meet me down here, okay? Hi. They both said again as they giggled their way up their rooms. After a few minutes, the twins head down the stairs where their mother was already waiting for them. She grabbed their hands with each of her arms as they exited the house. Their dad stayed behind since he said he was tired and in need of rest. The children gave him a small peck in the cheeks while Inko gave him a kiss on the lips. They then headed to their car and drove their way to the doctors to have their quirks tested and be analyzed. The kids were discussing what quirk they were going to get along their way to the doctor, and Inko happily listened to them talking. When they arrived, they sat down on the chairs in the hallway as they waited for their names to be called. The kids were playing with the toys that they brought along with them. They played heroes versus villains like they always do. Can we have Izuku and Izumi Yagi? The doctor would like to see you now. A nurse announced as Inko told her kids to pack their toys. They then scurried their way to the doctor's office and sat down across from him. The kids were being jittery as they no longer could wait. Hello, I will be your doctor for today. We will be doing some tests to figure out your quirks. And after a few minutes I will have the results and would show it to you once it is finished. Can we do them now, please? I want to know my quirk. Izumi pleaded as Izuku nodded vigorously. The doctor and Inko laughed slightly at both of their eagerness. Do not worry, we will now go to the test room. So let's go. The doctor told them as he got up from his seat. The children cheered as they followed the doctor to a testing room. After a few minutes of testing, the children returned and the doctor said that he will be back with the results. After a few more minutes of waiting, the doctor came back with a frown on his face that made the family worry. Is there a problem, doctor? Inko asked him with a worried expression. Well, I have good news and bad news. Which one would you like to hear first? The doctor asked as Inko chose the bad news first. It seems that Izuku will not be receiving a quirk. We took an X-ray and saw that he is double-jointed on his pinky toe. This mostly meant that they will be quirkless. Izuku's heart shattered at the news as he dropped his All Might figure that he was holding onto. His tears started dripping down from his eyes as the doctor looked at him with pity. The little boy turned for comfort to his mother as she had a disappointed look on her face that he has never seen before. What is the good news then, Doc? Inko then asked, completely ignoring his son that was crying silently. Izumi here has a powerful quirk. A stronger version of your quirk. She could move things with her mind using psychic energy and make powerful attacks with it. I'd say she'd make a fine hero. The doctor informed them. Izumi had a bright smile on her face that contrasted what his brother was feeling at the moment. Inko hugged her daughter tightly and praised her for her powerful quirk. Izuku looked distraught as he was being ignored by her mother. I'm going to be a hero, mommy. she said as her mother nodded. Yes, you are Izumi. Thank you, doctor, we will be leaving now. She bowed and carried Izumi in her arms. Izuku just got down from his seat and took his All Might action figure that he dropped from the ground. He bowed also to the doctor as he looked at him with pity. He followed his sister and mother to the car as he was almost left behind by them. The car ride was all about Izumi having a powerful quirk while Inko kept praising her over and over again. When they arrived, they were greeted by Toshinori and asked them how it all went. Well, Izuku was diagnosed quirkless, but our daughter Izumi, she has a powerful version of my quirk, Inko said enthusiastically. Toshinori's face was plastered with a smile that wouldn't fade away as he hugged Izumi tightly. My little girl is going to be the greatest hero ever, he said proudly as Izumi giggled in his arms. All the while, Izuku watched them being all happy. He just stood still near the door as he waited for someone to acknowledge his presence, but all were too focused on Izumi. He started crying silently as he walked past them and headed up to his room. No one realized that he was already gone. The next day happened and the twins were at the park playing with the other kids. It was mostly Izumi playing and Izuku sitting quietly in the sandpit. He was then approached by her sister with a bunch of her friends. Hey Izu, do you still want to be a hero? She asked him. I do want to be a hero, he said sheepishly. He was then punched by his sister in the face and was soon followed by the rest of her friends. He was being beaten as a familiar voice screamed for them to spot. They looked to see a very angry blonde with his hands popping like firecrackers. Izumi, why are you hurting Izuku? He said as he pushed them all away from Izuku. That loser wants to be a hero. He's quirkless and useless. He's a Deku. Izumi screamed as she turned away and left them. Izuku, are you okay? Katsuki asked the shaking boy. I just want to be a hero. Why does Izumi hate me, Kaken? He said as tears fell from his face. I don't know, Izu, but I promise you that I will protect you from them, Katsuki declared with determination as Izuku's eyes brightened up a bit. You promise? Izuku asked as he showed his pinky to him. I promise, Katsuki said back as he grabbed his pinky with his, sealing their promise together. A promise sealed together, a promise that must be kept, a promise that is soon to be broken. Third POV. It's been 8 years since then and Izuku's life has been a literal hell. He has suffered severe depression that he kept to himself and also suffers social anxiety from all of the harsh words being thrown at him by his classmates and teachers at school. Since he was 4, his family already forgot about him and no longer acknowledges him. He tries to win their favor by doing good at school and to earn high grades. But they were always being tampered with by the teachers since they couldn't accept that a quirkless student was better than the others with quirks. His grades were always low and his assignments were lost by the teachers when in reality they threw them out on purpose. He was always left all alone in the house, as his family would travel a lot and would do family bonding activities. He would always sit on his room and cry quietly and just accepted his harsh reality. He learned how to cook, clean himself up, and learned how to take care of himself at such a young age. School wasn't any better as the students mocked him and his quirklessness. He would come home with bruises on his arms and body as he hid them from others, not like they care anyways. Profanities were always being thrown to the poor boy as he tries his best to keep himself together when he already knew that he was broken a long time ago. His bullies were always being led by his sister and his friends. The only one that stayed with him was his friend Kaken. He kept his promise with him in the park all those years ago and protected him as best as she can. He fended off the bullies and would sometimes administer first aid at his friends' wounds. Izuku appreciated him and for the things he did, but he knew deep down that it was all out of pity. They were now finishing elementary school and were soon headed to middle school. Izuku is 12 now and was not in a happy place, he was far from it. It was the end of the day and he was about to leave when his sister and bullies showed up in his seat. He looked at them with dead eyes that sparked no emotion. It was unsettling to see, but that didn't stop Izumi from hurting him at all. Hey Deku, she called out to him mockingly. It's time for another round of beating today, are you ready? She said to him as a grin formed on her face. He didn't reply and just stares off to space. You little 𝗧𝗵𝗃, ignoring me, are we Deku? She then made him float with her quirk and threw him to a wall. The others soon followed and Izuku took a beating out of them. They stopped after 10 minutes and he had bruises and blood dripping down from his head. They laughed at his pitiful display as they left him alone in the classroom. He didn't yell, scream, or even cry during his beatdown. He was all too used to it, and he now seemed to lack the emotions that most human possesses. He left the classroom and the school was almost barren as the students all left. He was about to turn to the gate when he heard a familiar voice coming from behind a tree. He took a look to see Katsuki and Izumi talking to each other. He came closer and eavesdropped, curious of what they were talking. "Katsuki, why are you still hanging out with that nerd?" Izumi asked him. Izuku had his eyes widened but kept silent as he continued to listen to them. "Why, Izumi? Can't I just hang out with him? I mean, like, he is already pitiful and pathetic, right? So I'll just hang out with him and ditch him when we go to middle school," he said. Izuku's widened eyes soon narrowed down and he held his head low. He knew it. He knew that Katsuki was just with him out of pity. He wished he was wrong, but it proved to be right. He broke his promise 8 years ago. He hurted him. Not physically but emotionally, which was far more worse since he started growing feeling for him. He walked away slowly and headed home with tears staining his face. Katsuki saw him and he had his eyes widened. He didn't know that Izuku was listening to them and he heard every word he said. He didn't mean it but had to say it since Izumi was with him, and if he didn't said those words to her then she will hurt Izuku even more than she used to. He couldn't chase after him and apologize because Izumi was still there talking to him. He promised himself to explain everything tomorrow. Izuku arrived home and saw the empty house. He felt a wave of loneliness as he entered. He walked up to his room and laid on his bed, sobbing. He wailed in tears as he learned that his best friend and crush has been lying to him for years. He felt all the hope and happiness that he had so little of came crashing down. He stood up and went to the bathroom. He took his razor and started cutting himself. 1 cut, 2 cuts, 3 cuts until 30 cuts decorates his now bloody arms. He did it with no emotion and he let the blood drip down as he sat down on his but on the floor. He then wrapped himself with bandages and went back to bed to sleep. His depression got worse. The next day came, the atmosphere around him was gloomy, almost as if somebody died, which was true since a part of Izuku died the day before. He came to school and everyone avoided him like they always do. The whole day, Izuku avoided Katsuki as he tried to explain himself to what happened yesterday. He didn't give him a chance as he avoided him at all cost. The day ended and he was about to leave when Izuku and her gang showed up again in front of his desk. "Hey, Deku, why you look gloomy? Finally lost the will to live. If you really want to have a quirk, I have an idea," she said as Izuku looked at her to listen. "You take a swan dive of a roof and pray that you get a quirk on your next life," she said as she started laughing. The others laughed as well. They stopped when they saw Izuku smiling. "I'll take note of that, Izumi, thanks for the advice," he said smiling. It was the first time they saw him smile and they all were disturbed by it. They then saw him leave the room as Izumi and her friends stood still, thinking about what he said and how he thanked Izumi for her advice. Izuku was about to leave through the gates when Katsuki called out to him. "Izuku, please listen to me. I need to explain what happened yesterday," he said as he chased after the boy. Izuku didn't listen and he continued to walk away. "Please, Izuku, I need you to listen to me," he said as he grabbed Izuku's wrist and he immediately winced in pain. Katsuki took notice of this and looked to see that his arms was covered in bandages and was seeping blood. He looked horrified. "Izuku, what happened to your arm? We need to go to the hospital. We need to make sure you're I'm fine. What do you care?" Izuku screamed out, cutting Katsuki off. "No one cares about me. No one. So why would you care, when I don't even care about myself at all? I just want you to be okay, Izuku. I haven't been okay since I was 4. Don't you know how hard it is to keep on smiling and keep on thinking positively, when I am reminded of how pathetic and worthless I really am every day? I tried being happy and being okay, but nothing works. Voices keep telling me of how worthless and how much of burden I truly am. And don't tell me you care because I know you just do what you do with me out of pity. Now leave me alone. I don't want to see you anymore, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. He then left as he ran back home with tears in his eyes. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 stayed silent and let what he said process in his mind. He started crying as well and blamed himself for tipping Izuku off the edge. He couldn't do anything anymore as Izuku no longer wants to see him. He called him by his real name and nor his nickname like he always calls him. His name that came out Izuku's mouth struck the poor blonde's heart. When Izuku arrived home, he went immediately up to his room. He started packing clothes and stuffed them in his bag. He then took a piece of paper and pen. He started writing a letter to his family and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 that was only filled with sadness and anger as he wrote all of the feelings he had bottled up inside. He took the finished letter with him and left his home, never to return again. He ran to the forest that was near their home. He already found a place where he wants to end it all. Third POV. It was already dark and Izumi was walking her way back home while still thinking about Izuku's response when she told him to kill himself. She was cursing herself when she blurted it out so suddenly. She didn't meant what she said, it just came out in the heat of the moment. She knew she can't take back what she said to him. She already said it and only hoped that Izuku didn't actually took it seriously. She just wanted to help him realize that there are dreams that can be too far to reach sometimes, and his dream to be a hero without a quirk is one. She admit to herself that he could be one like his uncle Izawa who can only erase quirks and fought quirkless. He also had to deal with mutant types quirks that he can't erase, but he was an expert in combat. Unlike Izuku who was small, tiny and fragile. She was scared that the worst was to come if he pursued being a hero. So when they were 4, she thought that if she showed him ways that heroes get beaten up with quirks and he can't defend himself because he doesn't have one, then he can maybe stop dreaming an impossible dream. She had to admit that her logic was dumb as F, but she had already started it so, no going back now. She then remembered Izuku's face when they were young. He had a smile on his face every day and would brighten up any room he was in. He made everyone happy. But now, things are different. He no longer smiles and just looked dead inside. And his eyes that once had colors and shined brightly, only now dimmed, to the point where it almost felt lifeless. It was as if he was only a hollow body with no soul inside. She felt guilty because she knew she was the sole reason. She then remembered 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, who she talked with yesterday after school. She grabbed him by his arms and dragged him behind a tree to talk. She was being skeptical at 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 being all friends with his brother. She just wanted to make sure that he wasn't doing anything with Izuku behind closed curtains and was actually hurting him. She felt like a hypocrite. It was as if she wasn't hurting him. In fact, she hurt him a lot throughout the years. I'm a horrible sister, aren't I? She said to herself as she hung her head low. I have to make things right, she said to herself, trying to lift her spirit up. She then ran her way back home and barged into the house. She took of her shoes and placed them gently on the shoe rack. She then noticed that Izuku's shoes wasn't placed there. Is he not home yet? She asked herself. She walked down the halls of their house and looked at the many pictures framed on shelves. It was pictures of their trips when they were traveling together. She took a closer look and gasped when she realized that Izuku was nowhere to be seen in the pictures. It was only her and her mom and dad. She looked through every picture that almost dated back to 7 years ago, and he was nowhere to be seen. Inko saw her daughter on the shelves filled with their picture frames. She saw her covering her mouth with her hands as tears made their way down her face. Izumi, what's wrong? Inko asked worriedly as she walked her way to her daughter. Mom, why is Izuku not with us in our pictures? She said while choking in her tears. She looked confused and looked over the picture frames. She scanned every single one and her eyes widened when she saw Izuku in none of them. She panicked and took out a photo album from one of the drawers and flipped through every page. It was still the same. Izuku was nowhere to be seen in all of the pictures, and she felt a knot tying her stomach as she continued to search for her son in the album. It went far back to when Izumi and Izuku were 4 and she found a picture at that age. It was them on a beach together with Izuku having a bright smile as he played with the sand, covering his father in them. He was happy. Inko then started crying as she felt horrible and the guilt was eating her inside out. She felt like a horrible mother as she continued to sob profusely. Toshinori heard her crying and rushed into the living room. There he saw his wife and daughter crying with a photo album on their laps. He was confused at what made them cry. What happened? Why are you both crying? He asked them with a concerned tone as he made his way to them. I'm a horrible mother. I forgot about Izuku and we pushed him away. She sobbed uncontrollably, as did Izumi. Toshinori's eyes widened with the realization. He had been neglecting his son for almost a decade and he had not even noticed it. He felt horrible as tears started dripping from his eyes as he succumbed to the reality of him being a bad parent. What have we done? We never paid attention to him since he was 4, and that was when he was diagnosed quirkless. He said he started crying a river. What if we apologize to him? Make him feel lived again. And maybe he won't forgive us, but we deserve it. But at least we apologize and we'll promise to change for him. Izumi told them and they nodded. Is he here? God, I'm such an awful father. Not even knowing if my son is home or not, God. Toshinori cursed at himself. His shoes isn't in the shoe rack, so maybe he hasn't come home yet? Izumi concluded and her parents nodded. They waited for him to return to apologize to him and the way he was mistreated. It was 6 in the evening and they waited for him to come home. Soon, minutes turned to hours as he was not yet home. They started panicking at him not being home yet because it was already 10 in the evening. They then called for help to find their son who hasn't come home yet. They called 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏, 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗏, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏, recovery girl, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗏, and the 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏. They all turned up at their house and asked what the problem was. They explained everything that happened and mentioned them neglecting Izuku for most of his life. Angry was an understatement to what the adults felt towards the Yagis since they all were burning with rage. Mitsuki slapped Inko hard in the face. It was so hard that she fell down on her bottom 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗏 on the floor as she kept crying. She had to be held back by Masaru and 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗏 since she was ready to pounce at them. You bitch. How dare you do that to Izuku? That poor child. How long do you think he had suffered because of your neglect towards him? A bitchy excuse of him being quirkless, you quirkist, Mitsuki ranted at the Yagis who had their head hung low. Toshinori, I am very disappointed in you. How will you think Nana will react when she knew that her successor just neglected his son for being quirkless when you two were one? 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗏 yelled and kicked him with his jets in his stomach. Recover girl then smacked them both with her cane. I can't believe you two. You better find yourself a new hero to heal you when you're in battle because I'm no longer in service with you all. She stated as she smacked them again with her cane. Once we find the poor child, I am demanding you both to take off custody of him. Clearly he will no longer be staying in this household that had abused him mentally and emotionally. He will then be under UA custody and be given the life that he actually deserves. Nizu told them with his paw gripping on his teacup tightly. The Yagis were about to protest but was soon cut off by Aizawa's glare that struck them all. His eyes looked like he wanted to murder the two heroes for what they did to his nephew. You both will do what the rat said. I don't give a DMN about your plain but excuses because he won't ever have to be with you shitty but parents. I will gladly adopt him and train him to be a hero that he always wanted to be and give him the love and care that an actual family gives to their kids. I may not be much but I know that I could at least give him more love that you sickos can ever give him. They didn't fought back since they were actually scared of Aizawa and it was the first time they had ever heard him scream with so much anger. That's why he had those bandages in his arms. Katsuki suddenly shouted as the adults looked at him with widened eyes. Brat, what do you mean by bandages? Mitsuki asked him with a serious look. I saw Izuku's arms when school ended. We had an argument and I say his arms wrapped in bandages as some blood was seeping through them. He informed the adults. Everyone looked pale. Aizawa then pushed the Yagis aside with Mitsuki and they both headed upstairs to Izuku's room. When they opened the room, the smell of disinfectant was covering the whole room. The room itself looked horrible with horrible furniture and a moldy bed. They investigated the whole room and found a razor with dried up blood on the blade. They gasped and looked in the trash can to find bandages covered in blood. The rest of adults went up and smelled the disinfectant in the room as they covered their noses at how strong the smell was. They saw the whole room and gasped at the crumbling state it was in. Mitsuki then rushed out and grabbed Inko by the hair as she dragged him to the bathroom harshly. She showed him the bloodied razor and bloody bandages. "This is what you drove your son into?" She yelled at her as she continued to sob. Unbeknownst to them that Izuku was already at the place where he wanted to end his life in. Third POV. Izuku has been walking in the woods silently, following the trail that will lead him to his final destination. He was well acquainted with the forest, as it was the only place that kept him calm when he felt the most lowest. Since he was always left alone to be by himself, he wandered the woods to try and make himself happy for once. We would listen to the sounds of leaves rustling with the wind and would watch the leaves fall down and ride the wind. It made him happy. He started wandering the woods when he was 8. It was the time where he gave up on trying to make his parents recognize and acknowledge him. He did everything he could to make them notice his presence, but they always were wrapped around Izumi's fingers. She was always in the spotlight while she was always in the shadow behind her light. He got so sick of it, but it wasn't like he can do anything to change it. By the time he was 8, he accepted this depressing and harsh reality of him being invisible to the world and would always be someone that will stay in the darkness and loom over there for the rest of his life. He followed the creek that will lead him to his final spot. If he wanted to kill himself, at least he wanted to see something appealing in his final moments, right? He then started thinking about the past and the shitty things that he had gone through. He looked up the quirkless percentage and saw that 30% of the quirkless society killed themselves due to the discrimination they received. And soon he will be a part of that 30%. He then stopped at his tracks when he started remembering someone. Katsuki. He started crying silently at the thought of him. He was no longer going to see him after he kills himself, and when they last saw each other they fought. "Minute, if I knew I was going to do this, then I should have at least heard him out," he said to himself as he wiped of the tears in his eyes. "Kaken, I'll miss you. I'll just write down what I want him to know in my letter," he said as he took out the letter that was on his pocket and added few things. He then finally reached his destination. There in front of him was an appealing spring waterfall that looked like it came out of a fairy tale story. What it looked like. It was majestic and appealing. The perfect place for him to die. He started climbing up the rocks and tightened his grip on them to not fall over. When he reached the top, he looked at the wonderful view from above. He took a deep breath and actually smiled genuinely. He then took off his shoe and socks and placed them down on the rocks. He then took the letter out of his pocket and placed it gently inside his shoe to not let it be blown away by the wind. He made his way to the edge of the waterfall. He looked at the moon that illuminated the light and he smiled once more before closing his eyes and let a few tears escape from them. "Goodbye," he said as jumped off of the waterfall to drown into the water. But something else happened. When his body touched the surface of the water, the whole spring waterfall came to a glow of pink light. It illuminated the eerie darkness and made it look magical and appealing. He then dropped to the water as it looked like the water swallowed him whole when he fell. The water then came to a close and made a ripple along with it. Izuku disappeared into the water and the pink glow dimmed down slowly. The forest returned back to its succumbing darkness. Back with the adults, they kept shouting profanities at the family for what they have drove the poor boy to do. Katsuki started crying when he realized what he had done over the years to cope with all of the pain he felt. He kept shouting at the family as well as Mitsuki, as they looked like they were ready to burn the house down. Nizu was infuriated to the point where he threw his teacup to the ground out of sheer anger. "We need to find that boy immediately. Who knows what he could be doing, and there is a huge chance that he will attempt suicide if we are not able to find him," Nizu said as they nodded. "And you, Yagis, or should I say All Might and 𝗬𝗲𝗄, Nizu said, revealing their true identities, making the Bakugos and Izumi gasp. "I will be reporting you to the Hero Commission and I will make sure that your pay as heroes will go down by at least 70%. And when you both decide to teach at MY school, your pays will be deducted by at least 80% to the minimum." He then left the room with the others. Katsuki looked back at Toshinori and had the look of disgust in his eyes, knowing that his hero that he wanted to be like was someone like him that neglected their own son for being quirkless. "I no longer want to be like you, All Might. I always admired you and how you were always number one, but right now, you're just a shitty father that hides his true colors to the public. You don't deserve to be number one." He then scowled, leaving them alone as he stomped his way down the stairs. Toshinori only felt guilty as his words struck his heart and broke it to a million pieces. He can only blame himself and himself only. The adults discussed their plan to find the poor child and make sure that he was okay. The Yagis went down as well as they felt the glares of daggers shooting at them. All Might, I will look into the future. It may give us a clue to where Izuku is. He told him and he nodded. Sir Night-Eye then approached Toshinori and placed his hand on his shoulder and looked at his in the eyes as he used his quirk to look into the future. There in his vision he was underwater, surrounded by nothing but seawater. He then saw a man with blue hair and ocean eyes that matched the sea, looking straight at him. Suddenly a giant creature started coiling itself around the man. It looked like a serpentine dragon in mythology, and it had a pink luminescent glow all over its scales as it made the dark water glow with its light. It soon faced him and stared him down with his glowing ice-like eyes as it roared at him. It soon swam downwards and its pink light soon disappeared along with it. The man with the blue hair then faced him and his body started changing and morphed itself into a dragon. The dragon itself was made out of water completely as it glared straight at him. It made a big roar and swam to him with his jaws wide open and it took a bite out of him. Sir Night-Eye screamed and fell down into his bottom as he frantically tried to grasp for air. He was in a panic as his eyes showed nothing but fear. Night-Eye, what happened? What did you see? Aizawa asked him as he helped him up. I saw something bizarre and unbelievable, he said as the others got near him to listen. I looked at maybe around 2 or 3 years or so. I was underwater in the middle of the sea. Then in front of me was a man with blue hair and blue eyes. It stared me down. Then a creature started coiling around the man and it looked like a serpentine dragon from those mythology books. Everyone gasped at his claims as it was all too unbelievable, but from the way he was shaken up it was hard to not believe him since his eyes told them that he was telling the truth. Then the dragon creature looked at me and roared before disappearing into the depths of the sea. The man then looked at me again. This time he turned himself into a dragon of his own, and he was made out of nothing but water. He fixed his gaze up to me and started swimming to my direction and swallowed me whole. They all tensed up at his vision and realized that it was Toshinori's future that Night-Eye envisioned. He looked pale that there was a possibility of him being swallowed whole by a dragon. We must make haste, everyone. We must find that child before it is too late. I fear that he might change sides and be in league with those with bad influence. Not that I can blame him. Nizu said as he took a deep sigh. Now let's find him. Third POV. The search continues to find Izuku. Night-Eye, Gran Torino, and the Bakugos ran through the streets of the city, trying to find the boy and get him back home. Aizawa jumped from building to building, hoping to spot him in higher ground, and Nizu and Recovery Girl went back to UA and deployed the UA drones to search in the sky. Hours went by and still no sign of Izuku. Everyone was at a frenzied panic and all had worried expressions and concerned looks all over their faces. Katsuki was the most worried as he kept pacing back and forth as anxiety crept closer to him as his breathing started getting rapid. Mitsuki had to calm him down and placed her hands on his cheek and cupped them. She told him sweet nothings and said that Izuku will be found and that they'll keep searching for him till dawn. Katsuki nodded as tears of guilt dripped down from his face. The poor boy was struggling to keep it together since he knew he was the one that tipped him over the edge when he heard him say those words at school yesterday. All Might called Detective 𝗬𝗂𝗁 to help with the search. He explained everything that had happened and he was shocked and angry at the hero. He screamed profanities at him through the phone that made the whole police department scared, since it was the first time they had ever heard him scream so loudly due to anger. He agreed in helping in the search and used his high authority in the police department and sent out a few police officers to find the missing kid. The sounds of police sirens can be heard in the middle of the night as they try and search for the poor kid. Unknown to them that he is already gone. The original search party gathered at UA. Everyone came up empty-handed with no leads nor found any clue to where he might be. Mitsuki was being held back by Aizawa, Night-Eye, and Masaru from trying to beat the 2 Yagis up with her bare hands. Nizu sighed and was about to call of the search for now, until Katsuki suggested something. WhatIf Izuku is at the forest. he suggested, and everyone turned to look at him. Why would you think that he's in the forest? Nizu asked him. Well, we used to go there when we were younger, and he told me that the forest keeps him calm and happy when he starts feeling sad. Are you really sure about this, brat? His mother asked him. He nodded. I used to see him going in the woods alone and comes back late in the night. I'm positive that he's somewhere in the forest, he exclaimed, and the adults looked at each other. We don't really have any options, might as well just look into there, 𝗳𝗬𝗄 said, and they all nodded. They headed to the woods while the police department and Nizu's drones continued to look into the city. The rest looked for Izuku in the woods. Aizawa was with Katsuki as they followed the creek into the forest. Katsuki looked panicked and kept calling out to Izuku to come out. They kept walking through the forest, trying to find the poor boy and bring him back home. Kid, you need to calm down. We'll find that problem child and keep him safe, away from those, Aizawa told him. But what if we can't find him? I need to see him. Katsuki told him back. We will find him and take him back home. Aizawa couldn't shake the feeling that something was up with Katsuki. He looked guilty like the Yagis. It was like he did something to Izuku that he wasn't proud about. Did something happen between you two? He asked, and Katsuki tensed up. The rush of guilt came to him, and he couldn't help but let the tears drip down from his face. I think I'm the reason he's doing all of this, he yelled out in between sobs. What do you mean? What did you do? Aizawa asked him with venom and malice on his words. Izumi asked me yesterday why I'm still hanging out with Izuku. I told him that I was hanging out with him cause I pity him, and told her that I gonna ditch him when we go to middle school. Katsuki explained as his breathing became irregular and tried to calm himself down. I didn't know he was listening, and he just walked away from me. I saw him cry. I didn't mean any of those words. I just told Izumi that cause if I don't, she'll just make her bullying worse than ever. So what do you really think about when it comes to Izuku? Aizawa asked him, and he froze for a second before answering. I think he's kind, caring, and overall just a great person. I know that when we do hang out, he always wears this smile that I know is fake, and it hurts me when I see it all the time. I promised to myself that I would make him happy and protect him, but in the end, I was the one that tipped him over the edge. Katsuki began crying again, and Aizawa patted his back to calm down. It looks like to me that you like that kid. Not that kind of like, but the love kind of like, Aizawa said to him, and made him widen his eyes. He did felt his heart beat whenever he is with Izuku, and the sound of his small giggles would be music to his ears. He would feel his face heat up sometimes. Is that what you call love? I do like Izuku, he admitted, and Aizawa smirked at his realization. Suddenly, the creek started glowing a pink light that lit up the dark forest. The glow was magical but soon dimmed down and disappeared. Aizawa and Katsuki looked at each other before they started running to reach the end of the creek. There, they found a majestic and appealing spring waterfall. It was a sight to behold as the stream of water flowed down a small waterfall, and the place was littered with flowers of beauty. Both Aizawa and Katsuki were at awe at the sight. Katsuki then pointed at something near the rock's edge. They both started climbing the rocks to reach the top. Katsuki occasionally slipped but was caught by Aizawa using his capture scarf. When they reached the top, they found the object that Katsuki pointed at. It was a pair of red shoes that Izuku would always wear. Katsuki started crying and couldn't accept the possibility of him jumping and killing himself. They then saw something sticking out of the shoes. It was 2 pieces of paper. They looked, and the 2 letters were for the Yagis and Katsuki. They read the contents of the Yagi's letter. Dear Yagis, I hope you're happy now that I'm gone, not like you'd care anyways. I just want to say that you all 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵 hate all of you. I would never forgive you for the things you put me through. All the neglect, my health deteriorating slowly, losing my insanity. I'm done. I give up. I no longer want to be around you people that hurt me so much. My depression, my anxiety, the panic attacks that I receive daily, I don't want to suffer anymore. I'm taking you daughter's advice and jump off to kill myself. I hope to see you all in hell, you worthless pieces of 𝗧𝗵𝗃. In my last moments, I'm revoking the name of Yagi. I don't want to be named after the reason of my suicide, and I don't to be associated with any of you. Goodbye. Izuku. When the 2 finished reading the letter, They both cried as they gripped it tightly on their hands. Katsuki then took the other letter that was written for him and he read it. Dear Kaken, I'm sorry that we won't be seeing each other anymore, but I just want to tell you of how grateful I am for you being there with me for these past years. I wouldn't know what could have happened to me if you weren't around. You bring me the most joy, the most happiness, and the most hope in life. I still remember that promise you made when we were younger. I guess you did kept it yet. I will miss you. Please get over my death as soon as possible. I don't want you clinging to the past. I want you to move forward and become a hero. Be the hero that you want to be, and I will be with you in spirit. I'm sorry that I didn't hear you out when you wanted to explain things to me. I'm sorry. This is goodbye, Katsuki Bakugo. I love you. Goodbye. With love, Izuku. Katsuki screamed at the top of his lungs as he finished the letter. He held it close to his heart as he continued to sob uncontrollably. He then got down to the water and started searching for Izuku's body. The water was deep and the darkness wasn't helping at all. He kept searching through the waters as he cried tears that could fill up a river. He was too late. He couldn't save him. He couldn't even apologize and he couldn't even confess his true feelings. He couldn't say the simple words of "I love you" to him since he is no longer with him. His heart shattered into shards of glass that can never be whole once again. Third POV, Izuku's eyes shot open. His eyes wandered around and saw himself sinking deeper into the depths of the water. He looked around and saw nothing but water. He looked up to see the surface as a light shines passing through the surface, the only light source in the dark waters. He was confused. He should be dead, but why does he feel alive? The last thing he remembers is jumping off the waterfall and down into the waters to drown himself in. He couldn't remember past that and now he's underwater. Is this what hell feels like? He asked himself as he looked around. He was surprised that even though he's underwater, he could breathe normally. It was as if the water was actually air and was only just an illusion in his mind. He started cursing himself for what he had gotten himself in. He only wanted to kill himself to finally be set free of the chains that had held him back for so many years. He wanted to be free from the pain, free from the torment, free from the anguish that the world has brought to him. It was just a simple wish that he couldn't even do properly. Suddenly, he felt a presence around him. The presence felt regal and calming, but also dominating at the same time. He looked around to find the source only for him to find nothing but the water that stretches into the distance. He then looked down below him into the depths and saw something swimming. It was large and long, and was heading straight for him. The creature swam up to him and he was pushed back by the strong underwater current that the creature brought with it. He then looked to see something unbelievable. What the dragon looked like. It was a creature that can only be found in books of legends or mythology. It was a serpentine dragon. Majestic, regal, and appealing. It had appealing pink luminous scales that lit up the dark waters and turned them into a pink color. Izuku couldn't believe what he was seeing. A freaking dragon was in front of him and was staring him down. It was as if it was inspecting him and was being cautious. The dragon looked at the boy full of curiosity. She saw the boy's innocent face that was at awe. There she knew that he was not there to harm her but instead was admiring her and her glory. The serpent dragon started swimming up to the boy, coiling herself around him and placed her head in front of him. Izuku was shocked with the dragon's action and he touched her head and felt the tough yet smooth scales of the creature. She then gestured for him to ride her head and he nodded and swam on top of her. She then started swimming in lightning speed and Izuku held on to her for dear life. She first started swimming downwards into the water before doing a turn and started swimming upwards into the surface. Izuku held on tightly as they were about to reach the surface. When they did, he was shocked to see where they were. What the place looked like. They were at another spring waterfall that can almost match the beauty of the previous one. The water was crystal clear and the flowers and trees were luscious and appealing. He had never seen anything like this. The dragon dropped him on the water and was surprised when he didn't fell through, but was actually walking on the surface of it. Every step made a ripple on the water. The dragon then started coiling around herself and looked at Izuku straight in his eyes. Who are you? And what am I doing here? Izuku asked the dragon and she tilted her head. I should be the one to ask that, child. You have entered my domain of sanctuary. No mortal has ever made their way into my domain for centuries. The dragon said in a female voice that was dominating yet elegant and charming. I don't know why I am here either. I just jumped into the waters and I was here. Izuku explained as the dragon squinted her eyes. Why would you jump into the rocky waters? You are far too young to be doing such things alone, child. I just wanted to be free. You tried to kill yourself. You are nothing but a young boy. Why would you drive yourself into committing such a sin? Izuku then explained everything that has happened in his life. The neglect, the abuse, and then deteriorating factor of his mental, emotional, and social health, all because he was quirkless. A few tears escaped his eyes as he told the dragon his story. The dragon was angered with the actions of the people around him. No child should bear such pain in their youths. The dragon comforted the boy by rubbing her head against his body that made him giggle slightly. I feel sorry for you, child. No child should ever experience such a thing. A child should be showered with nothing but love from their parents and make them happy for the rest of their lives. This also answers the question on why you are here. What do you mean? Why am I here? The spring waterfall that you jumped into was no ordinary spring waterfall. It was a portal into my domain that was used by you mortals centuries ago. So, it was before quirks manifested? Indeed, child. Only those that have experienced such trauma may enter my domain. And that is why you are here. So, that's why. I would like to ask for your name, child. In exchange, I will present my name as well. Izuku is my name. Just call me Izuku? Very well, Izuku. I am Umi, the serpentine dragon of the sea, the bearer of gifts and the dragon of purity. Bearer of gifts? Izuku asked and the dragon nodded her head. The mortals would visit my domain to ask for favors and requests. I will grant it, only if their hearts are truly pure and kind. That is why I am also known as the dragon of purity. The dragon then turned away from Izuku and ushered him to follow her. She slithered her way behind the waterfall and made her way inside. Izuku soon followed and saw Umi went inside the cave. When he entered, he saw pink crittals decorating the whole cave, lighting it up and made it look appealing and magical. Umi then coiled around herself at the end of the cave and told Izuku to sit down. He did so and they both were facing each other. Izuku, let me ask you, what is something you dream the most that you would want to come true? Umi asked him and Izuku started thinking. He only wanted one thing in his life and that is to be a hero. But people mocked him and his dream and told him it was impossible for a quirkless nobody like him to be a hero. But he still wanted to be like one. I want to be a hero. A hero for those that have been looked down upon by society. I want to be a pillar of hope and make change to the corrupt society that has shunned those with weak quirks or those who are quirkless, like me. He said as he looked down to the ground. Such a noble wish for such a young mind. I smile at your bravery to try and fix the mistakes that the world has made. What if I tell you that you are able to do that? Izuku asked what she meant and she chuckled slightly. Then suddenly, a glow of an orb appeared out of her forehead. It was a brilliant glow of gold that emanated such a radiant light. The orb was presented to him. This is called a wish orb. It seeks out your most deepest wishes and will grant it. But if your wish is for your own selfish needs, then it will destroy you. It is also called the orb of judgment. Do you want to be judged in the hopes that your wish will be granted? She asked Izuku. He looked at the orb in shock with her eyes wide and his mouth opened. If he agrees, then the orb will have a chance to destroy him and kill him, which is what he has been wanting to happen. But this time, he has now the chance to make his dream come true. I accept. 33rd POV, I accept. Izuku said with much confidence. The burning determination in his eyes made Umi smile, and she showed the orb to him even further. Be mindful, child. You will die if your deepest wish is for your own selfish needs. Are you sure you want to move forward and be judged by the orb? She asked once more to make Izuku sure of his decision. He nodded for confirmation and he touched the orb with his hand. When he did so, his eyes and mouth started glowing a golden glow until golden light shined through them. He was then awakened underwater once more. He could only feel the water and couldn't see anything with how dark it is. There was no light, he was in utter and complete darkness. That was until a light source appeared. It came from the deepest depth of the underwater sea. It was a faint glow at first but soon shined brightly as it floated up towards Izuku. Izuku looked closer and saw that it was the orb of judgment, radiating its bright and golden glow. It swam up to Izuku and faced him. His eyes widened slightly but he calmed himself down. He then placed his hands on the orb and it began to radiate an even more abnormal bright light. Izuku looked around and the once dark waters became as clear as it can be. The water was no longer dark and was now a clear blue hue. Izuku looked at amazement with how beautifully clear the water was. He turned his attention to the orb and it backed away from him slowly. Izuku was confused, but it suddenly rushed forward and smashed itself to Izuku's chest. The orb was then absorbed by Izuku, much to his surprise. He looked and saw that his chest started glowing the same golden light. A splitting headache came to him and his body started getting sore. He screamed due to the pain as the waters that surrounded him gathered towards Izuku. The waters swirled around him in a vortex-like motion. The water was slowly being absorbed to Izuku's body that made him scream in pain. His hair turned from blonde to an ocean blue color. His eyes changed to a clear blue water hue that almost matched the crystal waters. When the water was all absorbed into Izuku, the headache stopped as well as his sore body. He breathed heavily and opened his eyes and saw another creature right in front of him. What the dragon looked like. It was another dragon. He has never seen a dragon quite like it, but to him it felt familiar. He feels like he has known the dragon for a long time. The dragon itself was majestic and regal. It looked powerful as well. Its body was entirely made out of water, but he didn't look like Umi, but instead looked like a proper dragon from storybooks or stories from legend. He approached the dragon and reached out his arm to touch it. He was scared at first, not knowing what the dragon would do, but was surprised when the dragon placed its head on his hand. His skin was covered in scales that were surprisingly rough and looked durable, despite the fact that it was made out of water. He smiled when he touched him and the dragon smiled back. Slowly, the dragon was absorbed by Izuku and it started disappearing into his chest. Izuku then felt that he was whole again. It was like the dragon was a missing piece of himself that he has been searching for all of his life. The dragon made a home out of Izuku's body and rested inside of him. Izuku touched his heart and smiled again. "Welcome home," he said as a tear dripped down from his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes again, he was back with at Umi's cave. Umi smiled happily as she saw Izuku come back alive and how bright he was smiling. Umi was hoping for him to come back alive since she saw something within him that he hasn't seen in a mortal ever since she was brought to the world. She knew that Izuku would do wonders and would bring hope to others like what he has wished for. "You have returned, Izuku. And it seemed like the orb judged you worthy of having your wish be granted. And it seemed your appearance has changed as well," Umi commented. Izuku's eyes widened and he rushed out of the cave to look into the water. He was shocked to see that his hair and eyes changed color and turned blue. In all honesty, he was happy with the change of look since he no longer wants to be associated with his family anymore. What he now looks like. He sprinted back to Umi and thanked her for giving him the wish orb. He wrapped his arms around the serpent dragon and she didn't mind it since she hugged him as well using her neck. "You are very much welcome, child. By the color of your eyes and hair, you have been bestowed upon by the orb, the power of the sea," she said to him, which made the boy excited. "What does my power do, Umi?" he asked. "You have the power of the water. To summarize, you have the same powers as me, but not as powerful. More like a leveled-down version of mine. If you wish, I can teach you how to wield that power properly," she suggested, and Izuku immediately agreed to it. Umi then started training Izuku to wield the power of the water. They trained day and night until Izuku could perfect his power. He also started training his body to earn a lot of muscles and to also increase his endurance, speed, strength, and agility. Umi also started teaching Izuku all of the things that he needed to know in education. Umi was incredibly smart and was more than capable enough to teach Izuku and become his teacher. Soon, they both grew closer and Izuku sees Umi more as a mother than anything else, and Umi started thinking Izuku as his son. Years has gone by since then and Izuku has the power of the sea. He has now a slender build and has tight muscles due to his workout trainings. He has also grown in height as he is now 5 feet 9 inches. During his water training with Umi, he has learned a lot and understood his power more. He has the ability to control and shape the waters to his liking and can even control the waters in the air. He can also turn some of his body parts into water and absorb the waters into his body. He can then also turn into his water dragon form that looked the same as the dragon he saw when he was given the wish orb. He can breathe out water out of his mouth and have sharp claws and fangs. He also has the ability to heal people with the use of his water that he controls. After 2 years of training in Umi's domain, he now wants to leave the domain and go back home to Earth. Umi respected his decision since he wanted to be a hero and make a difference in the world. It was now time to leave and they said their farewells. Izuku, I will miss you greatly. Be sure to visit me and my domain quite often. Umi said with pleading eyes. Don't worry, Mom, I'll visit you every month and tell you all that I have been through. He said back. He then waved goodbye as Umi bowed and smiled softly. She soon opened a portal and he went through it, not looking back since he didn't want to second-guess himself. He came out back into where he once fell. He was back at the waterfall spring. He got out of the water and was about to leave when he suddenly felt that someone was falling. He looked and there was a familiar blonde falling down the waterfall. He caught him and looked to see who it was and was shocked when he recognized him. Kaken. Izuku. Third POV. After Izuku's letter was found by Aizawa and Katsuki, they both headed back. More like Aizawa dragged Katsuki out of the waters who was thrashing around trying to find his body. Aizawa told him that they will dispatch a search party to look into the waters with gear and such. They both headed back to UA where Katsuki was crying all the way there. He held tightly what was the remainder of Izuku, which was his pair of red shoes and the 2 letters. Katsuki kept reading it over and over again while staining it with his tears. Aizawa kept things together while going back to UA, but inside he was definitely not okay. He wanted to cry so badly but had to keep it together if he wanted Katsuki and him to arrive safely at UA. When they arrived, everyone was there. They all saw Katsuki and Aizawa's wet clothes and asked them where they were. They also noticed their faces that had tear stains and their eyes that looked like it all lost hope. They didn't speak, they didn't mutter any words. They only handed them a pair of red shoes and all knew what happened. Katsuki handed the shoes to them as he fell to his knees and started sobbing all over again. Mitsuki and Masaru started crying as well and was soon followed by everyone, even the Yagis. No. You don't get to cry over this, you beach. You're the reason he killed himself. I heard you told him at school to jump off a roof to kill himself. Now look what you did, UF beach. Katsuki screamed out hysterically as he was held back by his parents since he was about to explode Izumi's face. The adults looked at her with disgust and anger. It made their skin boil and eyes lit on fire. Aizawa couldn't handle it anymore and used his capture scarf to bind Izumi. He wrapped her all around and squeezed her tightly as roaring tears dripped down from his face. Aizawa, let her down. It is now worth it. Nizu told him calmly. Aizawa let her go as she grasped for air, and her parents rushed to her side. Aizawa left Nizu's office soon after but not before he broke the door down with a kick. Everyone else left soon after. Masaru had to carry Bakugo in his back. Before the Bakugos left, Katsuki gave them the letter that Izuku addressed to them. He then took Izuku's red shoes and held on to them tightly. Izumi got angry saying that she wanted Izuku's shoes to be kept by her. Katsuki held on to it tightly as he gave him a frightening glare that made her back down instantly. Soon, everyone left Nizu's office until it was only him and the Yagis. The only reason that they were still there is because they pleaded with Nizu to not lower their payment and to at least let Izumi attend UA when she enters high school. Nizu was flabbergasted. They just lost their son and this is how they reacted. They were pleading for their money to not go down the drain and begged for Izumi to attend his school. He threw his teacup to the ground again and had a very predator-like expression on his face. You have a lot of nerve for actually begging me to not report you to the Heroes Commission, Toshinori and Inko. You just further solidified my statement of wanting both of your hero payments be deducted by 80% to the minimum. I will have you know that my cameras with built-in microphones have caught you all begging me to not report you. And for Izumi, good luck trying to get to you, because I will do everything in my power to not let that brat step inside MY school ever again. Now leave before I make you. The Yagis soon left in a hurried panic after Nizu's tantrum. He then immediately called the hero's commission president about the issue. She was shocked at how All Might treated his son to the point of suicide. The 80% payment deduction to All Might and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 was set into stone by the president. Sadly for Nizu, that was the only thing he could do, since the president told him that she couldn't revoke their titles as heroes, since All Might is the #1 hero and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 is number 6, and if they are to be revoked as heroes then crime rates would rise significantly. Even if this is the case, Nizu won't let them off the hook that easily. By the time that the Bakugos got back home, Katsuki raced back to his room with his letter and Izuku's shoe in hand. He locked the door and slowly fell to the ground with his back behind his door. He started crying again and repeated the words, "sorry," over and over again. He fell asleep crying that night. The next day, Nizu forced the Yagis to make a statement about their son, who is now currently missing. Someone accidentally leaked the reports of their son missing. That same day, All Might and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 were in a conference about their missing child. In the conference, All Might and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 admitted their neglect towards their son for the reason of him being quirkless. Many people were outraged from the fact that they both were quirkist people and drove their son to suicide. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 was the most PSS since he couldn't believe what All Might had done. He was a father and he couldn't do that to his own flesh and BLD, and from all of the people to be quirkist, he was one of them. To say the least, the Todoroki family lost a lot of respect for the #1 and 6 heroes. After a week of Izuku's sudden disappearance, the police was tasked to do a search near the Springfield waterfall. They searched the waters and saw no body and saw no lead that showed he died. They only have the suicide letters that he left. Katsuki that entire week was depressed and wouldn't even get out of his room. He even missed his graduation day and only stayed at home, locked in his room. He would only cry and eat when he feels hungry. He would stare at the pictures that they both took together and would read Izuku's letter over and over again. It was now stained with his tears. The red shoes were also with him, as his scent still lingers in the footwear. At the end of the week he discovered something behind the letter that he didn't notice. He looked and what he saw made him cry even more. "Be my hero, Kaken," it said. This made him cry once again. But instead of feeling depressed he started thinking positively and wanted to keep his promise to become a hero. To be a hero not for him, but for Izuku. The next week was Izuku's funeral. It was a sad, gloomy day as many attended. Heroes, strangers, and family all attended the funeral to mourn the death of a child that was mistreated by society. Because of Izuku's death, riots for change began. It was so that what happened to Izuku won't happen again to those who are unfortunate to be quirkless. A year has passed and Katsuki would always visit Izuku's grave when he has the time. He was appointed to a child therapy and was diagnosed with severe depression. After taking a few medications and talking things through, he went out of that phase. He would also visit the spring waterfall constantly and would just sit there and admire the view. He would bring Izuku's letter and his red shoes with him, and a bouquet of flowers that he would place in the water. He then kept his promise of becoming a hero and started training himself. He practiced how to fight and how to use his quirk to its full potential. He started training his body as well and gained a lot of muscles but was still pretty lean. Another year has passed and now he is currently walking back to the spring waterfall. It was now called Izuku Spring Waterfall in the memory of him. Many would come and admire the place and would pay their respect to Izuku. Katsuki has now grown and have a much more lean muscles. He now has the height of 6 foot due to the training he has implemented on himself. He climbed up the rocks and sat in the edge of the waterfall. "Izuku, if you can hear me, I'm gonna go to UA next year. I'm gonna be the hero you want me to be. So, just please look after me and watch me be #1. He said while looking at the edge. A wind blew past him and he smiled as a single tear escaped his eye. He was about to leave when suddenly, the water started glowing a light pink color. He was shocked by this but soon heard something from below him. A hole opened in the water and out came a guy with blue hair. He turned to the side and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 got a full glimpse of the person. He was tall, handsome, muscular, and had bright blue eyes that was as blue as the sky. He kept moving closer trying to get a good look out of him when he suddenly slipped off the edge and started falling down. He thought he was about to die when he suddenly closed his eyes. He was surprised when somebody caught him in time. He looked to see that the person who came out from the hole in the water was the one who caught him. He looked at his face and his eyes widened. He knew who it was. Even if his hair changed color or his eyes, he knew who he was just from the look on his face. "Kaken?" he asked, and his eyes widened and confirmed who he was. Izuku. 33rd POV. The ashen blonde looked at his now blue-haired best friend, with eyes threatening to spill his tears. He admired him for a few moments in silence as their eyes looked at each other directly. He couldn't help but to let himself cry as he clung to him tighter. "Izuku, is that really?" he said as he placed his head on his shoulder. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw him cry out a river. He couldn't help but hugged him tighter in his embrace. A few tears escaped his eyes as well as he continues to hug him tightly, in between his arms. "It's me, Kaken. It's really me," he said as he rubbed his back. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 hugged him tighter when he told him that he truly was Izuku. He started wailing as his feet weakened and he started falling to his knees. Izuku followed him and both were now in the waters, holding on to each other as they both cried tears of happiness to see one another again. After a few moments with each other, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 started calming down as well as Izuku. They hugged each other tightly and then looked each other straight in the eyes. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 suddenly placed his lips on Izuku's and made the blue-haired boy widen his eyes in shock, but kissed him back nonetheless. "Why did you kiss me, Kaken?" he said, flustered and as red as tomato. "I just want to make sure that it's real," he told him as he cupped his face together. They got out of the water and sat by the rocks. Izuku was leaning on 𝗵𝗃𝗃's shoulders as they watched the water stream down the falls. They sat quietly and listened to the water dropping downstream and listened to the birds chirping around them. "Hey, Izuku, I'm sorry for what I said back behind that tree, okay? I didn't mean I just dashed." He was cut off when Izuku kissed him to shut up. Hey, just stop, okay? I have forgiven you a long time ago, so please, let's just forget about that," he told him, and he nodded. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then wrapped his arms around Izuku as he placed his head on top of his. They sat there for what seemed like hours when it was only a couple of minutes. "Where did you go, Izu? We thought you killed yourself, but how the F are you here?" he asked him. Izuku only looked at the water before he gave out a deep sigh. He wanted to tell him, but what happened to him seemed too unreal for anyone to just accept it as the truth. People would think he's crazy if he told them that he met a freaking dragon and gave him powers. "When I jumped, something happened." 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then tensed up slightly but still continued to listen. "I fell into the waters, but then I suddenly woke up and I'm underwater in the middle of the sea." "What? How did that happen?" 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked. "Let me finish and you'll understand. When I was underwater, something came up to me. It was a serpentine dragon that you see in storybooks or those in mythology." 𝗵𝗃𝗃's eyes widened and he remembered Nitai's vision of All Might's future. "The dragon was named Umi, and she brought me up to the surface. Then we were at another spring waterfall, just like this one. She told me that the spring was actually her home. She told me that I must have entered her home since I have experienced severe trauma and it led me to her place. I told her what happened and she told me that she can grant me wishes. She asked what I wanted and I told her I wanted to be a hero. She granted me that wish and I was given a power to control and shape water." 𝗵𝗃𝗃's eyes widened when Izuku told him that he has now a quirk. His eyes brightened and hugged the boy tightly and Izuku only giggled with his cute reaction. "So you have a quirk now? You could totally be a hero now, Izu," 𝗵𝗃𝗃 told him with an enthusiastic expression. Izuku nodded. "Yeah, I can control the water around me and shape them and stuff," he explained. He then raised his hands and the water started rising up. He then turned his hand into a fist and the water followed and shaped itself to turn into a fist. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was amazed by this and couldn't keep his eyes off the now fist of water. Izuku then dropped his hand and it turned back to normal water and splashed down back into the spring. "That's so cool, Izu. You could totally be a hero and crush that beach Izumi. Katsuki said with a grin that honestly made Izuku laugh out loud. I can also turn my body into water. He told him as his arm turned into a water tentacle. Just imagine that armless lady from Legend of Korra. Katsuki touched it and it really was water. He then turned it back to his normal hands. So, how about you, Kaken? How have you been? He asked. I've not been that great since you left. I cried for weeks but I kept myself together and started training. I wanted to be a hero for you. He said embarrassingly as his face blushed with a rose tint color. Izuku felt so touched and hugged him tightly while giggling. He then placed a soft kiss on his cheeks that made Katsuki flustered even more. That's sweet, Kaken, but now I want us to be heroes together. I am sorry that I left you, but I'm happy that you still thought of me even though you thought I was dead. Katsuki then kissed his forehead. I'll never forget about you, Aizu. This statement made Izuku smile. For the remainder of their time, they sat and talked to each other. Katsuki told Izuku all that has happened since his disappearance. He told him that the Yagis were severely punished by the Hero Commission and got their hero payments reduced to about 80%, thanks to Nizu. He also told him that Izumi had almost little to no chance in getting admitted to UA since Nizu was still PSS with her. He also mentioned that All Might and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 received a lot of backlash to the public view on them and they lost a lot of fans. He also mentioned the riots that had occurred about equality for those with weak quirk and for those who are quirkless. He also told him that Spring Waterfall was named after him. This caught Izuku off guard as Katsuki pointed to a small statue of him where flowers and candles decorated it. Whoa, so like, I'm famous now cause I tried to kill myself. Katsuki nodded. Those riots actually worked and the government made even stricter laws for the discrimination of the quirkless and those with weak quirks. Izuku was taken aback by this. Because of him being gone, people made a difference and started acting to make a change for the betterment of society. This moved Izuku to tears a bit as he wiped them instantly so that Katsuki won't see it. They decided to leave the spring waterfall and head back. They walked side to side and Katsuki slipped his fingers through Izuku's hand, locking them together. Izuku gripped on his hands tightly as he leaned his head against his shoulder, since he's taller, and continued to walk away from the woods. Where do you want to go now, Izuku? Katsuki asked. Izuku didn't know what to answer. He then remembered his uncle Aizawa and had been wanting to see him. Can we go see Uncle Aizawa? I want to see him, cause I miss him so much. Izuku said and Katsuki nodded. Aizawa was currently at his home sleeping like always. Katsuki knows where he lives because he has been there visiting him since Izuku was announced dead. Aizawa was living with his husband Hisashi and their adopted son Hitoshi. After a year of Izuku's death, Aizawa found Hitoshi in a horrible state. He was covered in bruises and wounds. He decided to adopt him and get him away from his abusive home. He was abused because of his quirk and both parents were jailed immediately because of the new laws implemented by the government. He now lives with Aizawa and Hisashi, and Ligaki changed his name to Hitoshi Aizawa. Aizawa continued to sleep when suddenly the doorbell rang. He grumbled his way to the door and opened it, to be met with problem child Katsuki and another kid. His eyes widened when he recognized his face even though there was a change in hair and eye color. Hi, Uncle Aizawa. Third POV. Hi, Uncle Aizawa. Izuku said in a cheerful voice as he saw his uncle right in front of him. Aizawa had his eyes widened in shock as he saw his nephew in front of him. His supposedly dead nephew was in front of him, wearing a bright smile on his face. Even if his hair and eyes changed, his voice never did as he recognized them. Without a second thought he grabbed the boy by the shoulders and hugged him tightly, much to Izuku's surprise. Aizawa had a few tears escape from his eyes as Izuku hugged him back with his arms wrapping around them. They then heard footsteps coming towards them and it was Hisashi. He was coming from the kitchen when he heard the doorbell rang. Show who's at the door? He asked as his eyes fall to Katsuki and then his husband who was hugging someone. Who's that you're hugging, Sho? He asked as he saw the person's face. He dropped his phone that he was holding as it made a crashing sound when it hit the floor. He had tears in his eyes as he dashed forward and hugged him as well. Izuku. Is that you? Where have you been? We thought you were dead. Hisashi said in between sobs as he hugged the boy tightly. Izuku, you need to explain yourself. Aizawa said with a serious tone on his voice as he let go of him. Izuku nodded and him and Katsuki got inside their home. It was a cozy house with a big living room and kitchen. It was house made for a family. They sat on the couch with Izuku and Katsuki's hands still locked together as Aizawa took note of this. Hisashi went to the kitchen to get some orange juice. So, what's with you two and the hand-locking? Aizawa said with a smirk on his face. The two just realized that they were holding hands and they immediately let go of each other. They both were flustered and embarrassed as their faces were as red as a tomato. Izuku felt his heart beating in a fast rate and Katsuki was a little sad that they let go of each other. Hisashi came back with the drinks as he sat down with Aizawa next to him. They both looked at Izuku with serious gazes as they wanted an explanation. Well, you might think I'm crazy but I hope not since this really is what happened to me. He started out as the two adults assured him that they'll listen to him with open ears. When I jumped into the water, something happened and when I woke up, I was underwater in the middle of the sea. Something then swam up to me and it was a serpentine dragon with pink scales. Aizawa then had his eyes widened with the mention if the pink dragon since Sir Night-Eye saw the dragon when he looked into All Might's future. Her name was Umi and she called herself the Serpentine Dragon of the Sea, the bearer of gifts and the dragon of purity. I told her what I went through and she decided to grant me my wish of becoming a hero, so she gifted me with a power. So, she gave you a quirk? Hisashi asked and Izuku nodded. I can control and manipulate water, and also I can turn my body into water. She helped me enter my quirk in those 2 years where I disappeared. She also started teaching me about education and stuff since she was also intelligent. She acted like a mother to me and she also admitted that I was like a son to her. A few tears left Izuku's eyes as he started remembering his memories with Umi. It's okay Izuku, we understand. So meaning, you're the man that Sir Night-Eye saw in his vision. Aizawa said and it caught Izuku's attention. What vision, Uncle Aizawa? When he looked for you, we had Sir Night-Eye look into All Might's future to find you. He said that he saw a man with blue hair and eyes, a pink dragon and another one that was blue and it ate All Might. Izuku's eyes widened in shock. You mean I ate him? Well, that depends. Can you turn into a dragon? Izuku nodded, then it might just happen. He said in an expressionless face. Everyone's sweat dropped at his expression. They continued to talk and catch up with each other the remainder of that day. Izuku also met Hitoshi and they instantly became friends with their shared past. Izuku then wanted to meet everyone and Aizawa agreed with him. They called Sir Night-Eye, Grand Torino, Recovery Girl, Nizu, and the Bakugos. They informed them of Izuku coming back and they immediately headed to the Aizawa residence. Izuku was a bit nervous and Katsuki reassured him that everything will be fine. Izuku believed him and hugged him tightly, while the others snickered at them flirting with each other. Soon everyone arrived and stormed the house to find Izuku. The Bakugos first arrived and Mitsuki attacked Izuku with a big hug as tears swept her eyes. You brat, where did you go? Did you know how much we tried to find you? She said as squeezed him more. Masaru had to calm her down and told her to let Izuku go since he was about to suffocate from his hug. She apologized and let Izuku go from his grasp. Nizu and Recovery Girl arrived together and hugged Izuku tightly. Recovery Girl smacked him with her cane and asked him for an explanation to where he has been. Izuku told them he'll explain when everyone has arrived. Soon, Sir Night-Eye and Grand Torino arrived, but they were accompanied by people that Izuku never wanted to see ever again. It was the Yagis. Izumi and Inko had tears on their eyes as they approached Izuku running. My baby, you came back. Inko said in a teary voice. Brother, Izumi said. They were about to hug Izuku when he suddenly turned his body into water, and made the two go through him and made them soak in water. Everyone has their eyes widened that Izuku had a quirk. Izuku, you have a quirk? Inko asked and he didn't reply. Instead he had a frightening glare that stared the two down. What are you all doing here? I didn't tell Uncle Aizawa to inform you about me, so why are you all here? He asked with venom and malice. They were at my agency when 𝗬𝗍 called about you, Izuku. They overheard the conversation and pleaded about coming with me. I said no, but this family is persistent. Sir Night-Eye said as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. I want you all to leave now. Izuku said to them. The family refused until they are to be told by him of where he has been. Izuku then told everyone to where he has been. He mentioned him jumping the water, meeting Umi, and being gifted. They all were shocked and all might paled when he mentioned Umi. Now that you heard about it, leave. Izuku yelled out. They didn't budge and wanted him to go home with them. Izuku didn't want to, but Izumi grabbed his arm and started dragging him out with them. The others protested, but their words only fell on deaf ears. Katsuki was about to pounce on Izumi with his explosions, when suddenly they heard clanging coming from the bathroom and the kitchen. They saw the sinks were shaking and then water started coming out from the sink. The water started gathering around Izuku as his eyes turned into an ocean color that started glowing. Izumi let go of him, scared of his brother. The water then gathered in Izuku's right palm and formed a giant ball of water, floating in the air. I asked you to leave, he said as Izumi get angry herself and told him to go home with them. He snapped and fired the water ball to the Yagi family as they were sprayed by high-pressured water and were blown away outside the house. Everyone looked shocked at his quirk and how powerful it is. When the family was thrown out, they left the house with a frown on their faces and angry looks. They drove away. Izuku apologized for his sudden outburst and everyone forgave him since the Yagis were at fault and not him. They then continued their way to the living room and Izuku cleaned up the water that soaked the house. They then talked to each other and started catching up. The topic of where Izuku will be staying came up because Izuku didn't have a place to stay. The Bakugos couldn't adopt him because of how hectic their lives already are with their fashion company and such. They also said that Katsuki was already handful and made Katsuki feel offended. Izuku just laughed and the boy blushed a little. Aizawa then told them that he'd be happy to adopt Izuku. Izuku's eyes widened and he hugged his uncle tightly along with Hisashi. Nizu agreed to this and got the adoption papers ready. By the end of the week Izuku was now known as Izuku Aizawa, adopted by Shota Aizawa and Hisashi Aizawa. He now also has a brother named Hitoshi Aizawa. After a month of him being adopted, Izuku and Katsuki made it official that they were dating and they were both accepted by their families. Izuku grew closer with Hitoshi and they both were now acting as real brothers and would share their days together. Izuku started calling Aizawa as Dad and Hisashi as Papa. Hisashi started crying happy tears when Izuku called him Papa and Aizawa has a small smile hidden behind his scarf when he called him Dad. Izuku was now happy for a while now. He now has a real family. A family that will love him and would take care of him. Izuku's happy. Third POV. It's been a couple of weeks since Izuku has been adopted by Aizawa. When the adoption was progress, the Yagis tried everything they could to stop it. But because of how everyone knew of their treatment to Izuku, they ignored them and continued on with the adoption. After the adoption, Izuku legally changed his name to Izuku Aizawa and became part of the Aizawa family. Izuku loved his new family. He was being treated with love, he was being cared for, and all three of them were fun to be around. Hitoshi, his now brother, acted exactly the same way as his dad, Aizawa. They both sleep day in and day out, and they can sleep in any place as long as they have their sleeping bags. Hitoshi wanted to be also a hero. His quirk, brainwashing, was deemed as a villainous quirk by many, even his parents. But after he met Aizawa, he learned to love his quirk. Since Aizawa saw his determination, he started training him in martial arts and combat. He even gave him his own capture scarf that Aizawa uses. He has been training with them and has been improving ever since. He admitted that he was gay to Izuku and Izuku didn't mind it because he was dating Katsuki. Aizawa was a surprisingly protective dad. Even though he doesn't show it, he gets easily panicked when it comes to Izuku and Hitoshi. He was a great dad in Izuku's opinion, much better than Toshinori. He had work at UA in the morning and had to go patrol at night. This made him sleep deprived and would sleep almost anywhere as long as he has his sleeping bag. He also started teaching Izuku some basic hand-to-hand combat because he doesn't want Izuku to rely on his quirk alone. Hisashi was, in Izuku's opinion, the fun dad. He was always loud, which Izuku had to get used to, but aside from that he always brought the liveliness in the house. He had his radio show and he would constantly invite Izuku to his show. They also used this as a method to announce that Izuku has been found safe and alive. Many of the public cheered for Izuku coming back home. It has been at least a month since Izuku returned and he was walking his way to his boyfriend's school. Izuku didn't want to go to school since he thought it'll be a waste of money and a waste of his time since Umi already taught him everything that he needed to know, so school was unnecessary. As Izuku was walking, he was thinking about his and Katsuki's relationship together. Since they made it official that they have been inseparable ever since. They hang out a lot in the weekends when Katsuki doesn't have school and would often have dates with each other. They were both happy, to say the least, and everyone supported them, except the Yagis. Shocker. Izuku was walking down the street and into an alleyway as a shortcut to Katsuki's school. He entered the alleyway and was met with a vile smell of sewage. It was disgusting and Izuku had to pinch his nose to unmask the smell. Suddenly, he felt something moving from down below him and saw a weird tentacle coming out from a drainage. It tried swiping Izuku's foot but he luckily dodges backwards. The meat suit. I have found myself a new meat suit. The villain said through the drainage. The villain then sloppily revealed himself as he made his way up to the alley through the drainage. It was a villain with a mutation type of quirk that made him look like a giant blob or a giant slime creature. Izuku took a battle stance as the villain started approaching him. "Kid, I'm gonna make you my new meat suit," he declared as he lunged at Izuku. Izuku got away by turning his right arm into water and grabbed something from behind him and pulled himself backwards. He turned his arm back to normal. He then started gathering the moisture in the air around him and gathered them on his palms. He then fired the water in a high-pressured state that went through the villain because of his slimy body. Izuku got annoyed by his failed attempt. "Nice try, kid, but you're dead," he said as he shot his slimy tentacles towards the boy. He dodges again by swinging to the side using his water hands. He then decided to fight back as he swung his water tentacle arms at the villain. The water was cut through the villain's body as Izuku continued his onslaught of attacks. The villain shrieked in pain as he felt his body slowly being cut down. Izuku then started gathering the water in the air and started compressing the villain in a bubble-shaped prison made out of the water. The villain struggled to break free as the bubble prison started getting tighter and tighter. Izuku then exploded the bubble, causing the villain inside to splatter all over the alleyway. He then successfully defeated the villain. He then found a soda bottle and was about to scoop the villain inside when he heard something coming down from above. It was All Might. Izuku wasn't in the mood to talk to him, so he just left without saying a word. All Might tried talking to him, but it all fell on deaf ears. He sighed and scooped the slime villain into the soda bottle and jumped away. Izuku finally reached Katsuki's school and stood near the gate. He saw the students pouring out and decided to wait for him. He took out his phone as he leaned behind him. He felt eyes staring at him, but he ignored them. Two girls then approached him. Could I get your number?" the girl with blonde hair said to him. He got annoyed slightly but didn't show it in his face. "Sorry, but I'm off the shelf," he said, smiling as he went back to his phone. "Then who are you waiting for?" she asked, and as if it was on cue, he saw Katsuki in the gate looking for him. His eyes lit up as he saw his boyfriend and pushed through the girls. He walked next to Katsuki and locked their hands together as he planted a kiss on his cheek. He looked back at the girls who had a face of disbelief. Katsuki doesn't mind if people know that he's gay or if he's dating a guy. He cares less about the opinions of those extras. "How was your day, Kaken?" Izuku asked as he looked up to Katsuki since he was tall. "Fine, I guess, annoying extras like always," he grumbled as Izuku giggled slightly. They were walking to the arcade to have some fun since tomorrow was the weekends. They were walking when suddenly a soda bottle hit Katsuki in the head really hard. He rubbed his head as Izuku laughed out loud. "Stupid bottle." He scowled as he kicked the bottle and it opened. The slime villain from earlier came out as both Izuku and Katsuki's eyes widened. It started laughing before recognizing Izuku as the brat from earlier. He was about to capture Izuku in his body when Katsuki pushed him out of the way and was the one captured instead. Civilians from all over saw what happened and quickly yelled for heroes to come. Izuku watches in horror as 𝗵𝗃𝗁 was slowly being absorbed into the slime's body. He tried saving him but was quickly blown away by the slime that was using 𝗵𝗃𝗁's quirk against him. The heroes 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃, 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 arrived at the scene. 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 grabbed Izuku with his branches and dragged him out of the way. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 tried punching the villain only for his arms to be by its body. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 couldn't use her quirk because of narrow the road was and it would cause huge damage. We need to wait for backup, our quirks are useless against it. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 told the other as they nodded. Izuku was in disbelief as the heroes were just standing there doing nothing, all the while his boyfriend was slowly suffocating in the villain's grasp. He saw 𝗵𝗃𝗁's eyes that had fear in them and a lonely tear slipped out from them. Izuku couldn't handle it anymore and rushed in to fight the villain and save his boyfriend. He ran towards the slime villain with his arms turned into tentacle-shaped waters. The heroes told him to get back as their words fell on deaf ears. Izuku was determined to save his boyfriend, no matter what. He then started swaying and swinging his arms, left to right. It was as if he was dancing. As he swung his arms, the water turned into shard that shot the villain's body and avoided 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃. The villain was angered and shot his own slimy tentacles to Izuku, who dodged them gracefully as he did flips and side steps. He was dancing in the battlefield. He then looked at the villain and saw that his eyes were the only thing physical in his body. He then moved both his arms and made a point on the edge. His water arms extended and pierced its eyes that made him howl in pain. He loosened his grip with 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 and Izuku extended his right arm and wrapped 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃's waist around his water tentacle. He successfully pulled him out and held on him tightly as they jumped back away from the villain. Izuku then saw a fire hydrant with water gushing out and decided to control it. He started doing circle motions with his arms and hands, and the water started wrapping itself around the villain until it constructed a ball of water with the villain trapped inside. He then snapped his fingers and it exploded and made the villain inside splatter his slime body all over the street. When the citizens saw him defeat the villain single-handedly, erupted in cheers and yells for the ocean-haired teen. He couldn't care less about them cheering for him as he paid all his attention to his boyfriend. He looked at him with worried eyes before he hugged him tightly in his warm embrace. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 hugged him back as the crowd continued to cheer and clap for them. 33rd POV. After a shared hug between 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 and Izuku, the crowd cheered as they witnessed the blue-haired boy defeat the villain single-handedly and save his friend. The heroes approached the two and scolded Izuku for the stunt he pulled. "Young man, do you understand how dangerous that was? You could have gotten yourself killed." 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 shouted at the boy. "You should have just stayed behind and let the pros handle it. You shouldn't be risking your life." 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 said, and that hit a spark on Izuku. "So, you're telling me that I should just sit back and watch as I see my boyfriend slowly be into that slimy thing? What kind of idiot would have that kind of mindset? Should I just sit there and wait for backup because you heroes said that your quirks weren't suitable for that villain? Seriously. If you would have analyzed the villain, you could have noticed that his eyes were his weakness since it was the only thing physical about his body. Now don't even try to scold me since I did your jobs for you and saved my boyfriend in time, because if I didn't he would have died." His whole speech was filled with anger as it was captured in live broadcast since the news media was present. The heroes were speechless. They couldn't fight back his words since they were all true. They were heavily humiliated by a kid and made then hung their heads low. "Now, I suggest you step up your game, heroes, because at this moment, if I didn't step up, you all would have failed to save life. Me and my boyfriend are going to be leaving now, and I suggest you don't block our way," he said as he glared at them. Izuku grabbed 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃's right arm and wrapped it around his neck to support him. The people did what they were told and moved out of the way as the couple walked away from the villain's sight. They took a couple of turns to alleyways to reach their way home. Izuku noticed the glum look on 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃's face. "Kaken, what's wrong?" Izuku asked with concern as he saw his boyfriend's eyes start to water. "It's just, I feel so weak that I couldn't even save myself. You had to come and save me, and that made me feel so weak and helpless," 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 said out loud as tears streamed down his face. Izuku sighed and stared the blonde in his eyes that were stained with tears. He cupped his face so that they both were staring with one another. Listen here, Kaken, being weak is nothing to be ashamed of, staying weak is. Guess where I quote that? If you know, then we can be best friends. Shocked, Izuku declared as he kissed his forehead. You need to learn that there will be times when you can't face things alone. You can't look to your left and right at the same time now, can you? You need someone to be with you, and I'll be more than happy to be that someone. Because no matter what, we are in this together. Izuku then hugged Katsuki tightly. Katsuki hugged back and felt the warmth Izuku had. He then looked at his eyes that always made him calm since it reminded him of calm ocean waters. He kissed him passionately and Izuku kissed back. They then started walking back home with their hand interlocking. Izuku leaned on Katsuki's shoulders as they walked. Hey, Izu, the UA entrance exam is about 10 months from now. What do you say that we train together to pass that exam? Katsuki suggested as a bright smile formed on Izuku's place. Sure. I have the perfect place for us to train. In that trash park beach. That dump. But it's filled with trash and nothing but trash. Well, we could use those trash as our training and build up our muscles. We could clean up the beach and that would count as training, and as a plus, that is us doing community service. I guess, let's check that place out first and see what we will be working on. Katsuki suggested and Izuku nodded. They made their way to 𝗳𝗵𝗲 Beach and were immediately disappointed with what they saw. They saw All Might and Izumi already starting to clean the beach. They both grunted and turned back, not wanting for them to spot by the two of them. Where should we train then? Katsuki asked as Izuku had a bright idea. How about we train with 𝗵𝗲? He said enthusiastically. That dragon you said of. Will she even agree? Sure, why not? They both agreed with them planning to train with 𝗵𝗲 and decided to ask for permission to their parents. Aizawa and Hisashi agreed as well as Katsuki's parents. Izuku invited Hitoshi too, and he took the invitation since he wanted to see 𝗵𝗲. The three teens made their way to Izuku's spring waterfalls. Izuku still couldn't get used to the name but still was grateful for it. They reached the spring and Hitoshi's eyes widened since he has never been there before. Now, how do we get to that place, Izu? Katsuki asked. Easy. For me. Izuku yelled out. The two boys were confused, but suddenly the water started glowing a pink glow of luminescent light. They were amazed and were dazzled by the sudden light. They then turned to the water and saw it starting to open up and formed a hole. Come on, guys. Izuku called out to them as he jumped into the hole. Katsuki and Hitoshi reluctantly follow behind him as they jump into the hole. When they did so, the hole closed and left behind a ripple in the water as the pink light dwindled down back to normal. All three soon popped out of another hole that came from the spring waterfall in 𝗵𝗲's domain. Katsuki and Hitoshi were amazed by how appealing the place was. They were intriguing until they saw a huge creature come towards them. It was the pink serpentine dragon that Izuku kept mentioning about. 𝗵𝗲, I missed you. Izuku told her as he gave her a hug. 𝗵𝗲 did the same as she rubbed her head at Izuku. It is nice to see you again, Izuku. But I see you brought guest with you, she said as she averted her gaze at the two unfamiliar mortals in front of her. They're my friends 𝗵𝗲. That purple-haired one is named Hitoshi, and that ash-blonde one is my boyfriend Kaken, Izuku said, introducing the other two to 𝗵𝗲. They both bowed as a sign of respect since they felt intimidated by the dragon in front of them. I see. I am 𝗵𝗲, the serpentine dragon of the sea, the bearer of gifts and the dragon of purity. What is it that you hope to accomplish by entering my domain? She asked as Izuku explained why they were there. Izuku explained if she could help train them for the upcoming entrance exam that UA was about to hold in 10 months. 𝗵𝗲 happily agreed in helping them train and help them improve their skills. 𝗵𝗲 first assessed Hitoshi and Katsuki's skills so that she knows what they need to improve on. She summoned two knights made out of water and commanded them to attack the two teens. Hitoshi engaged in battle with one of the knights as it tried slashing him with its sword. Hitoshi jumped back and dodged all of its attacks. He used his capture scarf and wrapped it around the knight's waist and threw him to the ground. He then wrapped the knight again and pulled it towards him and delivered a kick to its guts that made it turn back to water. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 easily defeated his knight by exploding it back to water. He had trouble since the knight was making his arms wet and it wiped off all of the nitroglycerin off of his palms. Umi was satisfied with the results and knew what they needed to improve on. For the next 10 months, they would train in Umi's domain to improve themselves and their abilities. Umi started training Hitoshi by having him improve his fighting abilities and his combat skills. He also made him do a lot of body training to improve his muscles and increase his endurance and speed since he needed them when he engages in battle. Umi had him do hundreds of swimming laps to increase his upper body strength as well as his leg strength. He would also train with his dad in using his capture scarf in the weekends. He would battle multiple water knights at the same time to improve his battle abilities and solidify his battle style. He also decided to design his own capture scarf and his dad agreed. With the help of Izuku, they came up with a design that instead of a scarf design, it would instead wrap around Hitoshi's arms. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 had to improve the use of his explosions. Umi had him try to control the blast of explosions so that it won't be as destructive as it should be. He also trained his body and muscles, and improve his endurance and speed. Like Hitoshi, Umi had him swim multiple laps to improve his upper body and his legs. He also started doing martial arts with Aizawa's teachings since he wanted to learn because he couldn't just rely on his quirks all the time, and Aizawa respected it. Since 𝗵𝗃𝗃 used his palms to use his quirk, Aizawa suggested palm strike techniques and he agreed. He trained with him on the weekends to improve his palm strikes as well as other martial arts. Umi also had him battle multiple water knights to act as villains to improve his battle abilities and skills. He has improved greatly with her help. Izuku improved the use of his water body with the help of Umi. He learned he could freeze the tips of his water arms to act as pointed swords and such. Izuku also improved on gathering the waters in the air faster and more efficiently to not waste time when in battle. He trained his body also and swam hundreds of laps to improve his upper and lower muscles. He also was being taught martial arts. Aizawa suggested Tai Chi martial arts since it will be most effective when he uses his water arms together. He started learning and was learning fast as he was able to know the basics well and just needed to master to the fighting style. He also asked Umi to teach him how summon water knights since they were useful for training. She showed him how and was able to master it. After months of training, he was able to discover his healing abilities when he tried helping 𝗵𝗃𝗃 with his injury. Umi told him that it was a rare ability that even she didn't have. He then practiced his dragon form and learned how to control it properly. He was able to breathe scalding water or freezing water out of his mouth. He was also able to fly while carrying 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and Hitoshi. And after months of training they three have improved greatly and were ready to take on the UA entrance exam. 33rd POV. It was now the day before the entrance exam and Izuku, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and Hitoshi are doing last-minute training with Umi. They were battling with Water Beast instead of the usual Water Knights so that they would have to adapt with other enemies. This is so that they won't be too complacent. Hitoshi was battling a Water Beast walking in 4 legs and has a gaping maw, ready to bite the boy. Since Water Beasts don't talk, much less respond to his questions, he is using his capture bands to subdue the beast. He now calls them capture bands because instead of them located on his neck, they are now in his arms, acting like armbands. He jumped trying to avoid its bite attacks and started wrapping its legs with his capture bands and held onto them tightly. He used all of his upper body strength to swing the beast around and slammed him into the ground. The beast diverted back to water as he defeated it. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was battling his water beast in the air as this one has wings. It started spitting water ball at 𝗵𝗃𝗃 that was aiming for his body. He dodges them swiftly by maneuvering his body with his explosions to dodge. He made a sharp U-turn and caught the beast off guard. With the use of his newly palm strike, he striked the water beast in its gut and followed up by a point-blank explosion. He wasn't done yet as he grabbed the beast and started spinning him around and threw it to the ground with much impact as he used his explosions to do so. It turned back to water. Izuku's beast was large and bulky, it made it slow but packed quite a lot of punch. Izuku was running laps around it as it tried to punch him. He was slow so Izuku was able to dodge them by using his water arms to pull himself to places. He then turned the tips into ice that shaped into a scythe blade and started spinning around to cut the beast into pieces. The beast wailed and started punching the ground aimlessly, trying to smash Izuku. Izuku then fired water at the beast using his water arm as it froze when it came to contact with its body parts. It froze its limbs, rendering it immobile. Izuku then jumped up in the air and placed his arms below him and made the ends pointy. He then started spinning and made a drill-like move that went through the beast's head. It then made a splash when it turned back into water. Well done, children. You have vastly improved these last few months. It will be impossible for you all to not be able to pass that exam. Umi praised them. It's all thanks to you, Umi. We owe you a lot. Izuku told her. Yeah, if it wasn't for you we wouldn't have improved this much. Hitoshi said. They're right. Those in UA won't know what'll hit them. Katsuki said with a smirk on his face. Thank you for your flattery. Now I suggest you all go home and rest, for you all need the energy for tomorrow. Umi told them as she opened a portal back to Izuku's spring waterfalls. Izuku hugged Umi before he left through the portal, soonly followed by Hitoshi who waved her goodbye. Katsuki was about to leave when Umi suddenly blocked the portal with her tail. Oh why you blocking my way out, that? Katsuki huffed out at her. I just have a few words to say to you, child. I treat Izuku like a son, and so make sure that he is safe and happy. If I see that you hurt him and break his heart, I will personally drag you into the depths of the sea where your body will never be found and you will shrouded in nothing but darkness. Do I make myself clear? Umi threatened him. Katsuki just clicked his teeth and scratched the back of his head. You don't need to tell me that, dragon. I won't let go of that nerd. I'm not gonna lose him twice. He said with a blush on his cheeks. Umi smiled and moved his tail out of his way. Katsuki looked back at her and she bowed and looked at him. He turned and raised his hands as a goodbye. He then passed through the portal. Izuku and Hitoshi were waiting for him and he made his way to them. Izuku took his hand and intertwined them together as he leaned on his shoulder. Hitoshi, being a single Pringle, rolled his eyes and got in front of them, not wanting to see them flirting with each other. They headed home and Izuku and Hitoshi were greeted by their dad and papa. Hizashi was in the kitchen making dinner and Aizawa was in the couch playing with their cat Mocha that he found in the street when he was out patrolling. They ate their dinner and talked about their day. After dinner they went upstairs to sleep early, so that they'll have the energy that they need for tomorrow's exam. The next day came in a flash and both Hitoshi and Izuku were getting ready. Izuku was wearing a blue tracksuit with a blue tank top inside. Hitoshi was wearing a purple tracksuit with a purple tank top and his capture bands in his arms. Oh problem children, get down or we'll both leave you brats behind. Aizawa threatened in his tired voice. The two made their way down the stairs and out the door where Hizashi was waiting in the car. They drove their way to UA where swarms of students can be seen heading inside the school campus to attempt the entrance exam. Izuku and Hitoshi got down from the car and waved their parents goodbye since they were going to the UA building and they needed to go to orientation. They saw Katsuki and went with him inside. While walking, there were so many students and they scoped them out since they might become their classmates in the near future. Izuku then saw a brunette girl trip and almost fell face first to the ground. He turned his arms into water and stretched them to reach her just in time before she fell. She looked surprised that she didn't fall and noticed that water was wrapped around her waist. She turned to see it coming from a blue-haired boy with blue eyes. He approached her. Sorry for using my quirk on you, but it would be a bad omen if you trip before the exams start, am I right? He told her. Thanks. She chirped as she waved goodbye to him. Izuku made his way back to Katsuki and Hitoshi. Katsuki intertwined their hands together as Hitoshi made a fake GG. They head inside the orientation. They first had to do a written test that was 3 hours long. Katsuki finished after an hour and soon followed by Izuku and Hitoshi who took an hour and a half. They made their way to ground beta where the practical tests were to be held and they sat down next to each other. Hizashi then appeared and explained the rules. Hitoshi's eyes closed as he fell asleep. Okay, little listeners. For the practical test, there will be robots all over the city, each having their own points. There will be 3 robots that range from 1 point to 3 points and dash. He was then interrupted by a boy with glasses and blue hair. Sir, the pamphlets said that there is a fourth robot. If this is a mistake, then UA should be ashamed of themselves for making such a mistake with the title of being a prestigious school. He stated, and then he pointed at Shinso. If you are going to sleep, then I suggest you leave this place. That is not what a hero should be doing at this moment. 𝗳𝗵𝘃𝗲, shut the F up and sit down. Katsuki growled. Such a violent personality. You shouldn't be acting like that when you want to become a hero. He told him, and Katsuki was about to say something when Izuku cut him off. Hey, for eyes, I suggest you shut the F up and sit down. While you're at it, get that stick off your butt. And if you would have just shut up, 𝗵𝘃𝗄 would have explained that the fourth robot is just a trap. Something to be avoided. Why don't you shut up and sit down before I make you? Izuku said in a threatening manner as his eyes glared at the boy. The boy immediately sat down in fear as he sweated bullets. 𝗵𝘃𝗄 then let out a nervous laugh. He's right, little listeners. The fourth robot is just a trap, so avoid it at all cost. Now get to your positions. He yelled as the students scrambled to their places. Sorry if I snapped at that guy. Izuku said to Katsuki. Nah, it's cool, Aizu. Besides, you looked kinda hot while doing it. Katsuki whispered to his ears as a blush formed on Izuku's face. He was about to punch him in the shoulders, but he was already gone. He sighed and headed to his section of the exam. Ready, little listeners? Go. Mike announced as Izuku dashed forward while the other remained. What are you doing, little listeners? There's no countdowns in battles. Follow that blue kid. He told them as they ran to the city. Izuku was already stacking up points as he used his water arms with a frozen tip to destroy the robots. He started swinging using the poles throughout the city streets as he continues to sought after robots for more points. He saved a few people along the way by grabbing them with his water arms, and after 10 minutes he already had 77 points. In the monitoring room, the teachers were looking at the screens that displayed the whole exam. They turned to a screen where a girl was making the robots float, then make them fall to the ground. Another showed Hitoshi wrapping the robots with his capture bands and made them topple to the ground. Katsuki was then viewed and saw that he was exploding the robots left and right, even stole some robots from other students. And it finally viewed Izuku, who had slicing the robots in half with his frozen-tipped water arms. There are a lot of potential this year, Midnight said while her lips seductively. Aren't Aizawa's kids also there? Didn't you offer them recommendation slips? 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗃 asked Aizawa. I did, but they wanted to the regular exam and prove themselves or whatever. Aizawa answered in his tired and sleepy voice as the teacher nodded. Well, let's see if they can prove themselves when this opponent arises. Nizu said cheerfully as he pressed a red button. Suddenly, the ground started shaking and out came the 0-pointers all over the city arena. Izuku saw the robot and it was taller than the buildings. He then saw the students running away and he was about to do the same when he heard someone calling for help. He looked to see that it was the girl from earlier. He hurriedly swung through the city with his water arms and made it to the girl. He saw that her foot was stuck under debris and rocks. He lifted them up quickly as the 0-pointer made its way to them. It fired rockets at the two with rockets, but they were able to dodge when Izuku held onto the girl and pulled them away from the 0-pointer. Izuku then placed the girl somewhere safe before he faced the 0-pointer off. It fired more rockets and he dodged them to the side. He then transformed into his water dragon form that made him look like a dragon. The teachers and students stared at amazement. Aizawa smirked when he saw him transform into a dragon. Izuku's dragon form was as tall as the buildings. The 0-pointer fired off more rockets to Izuku, but it came to a surprise when the rockets went through Izuku's water body. He then flew towards the robot and toppled it down backwards as he placed himself on top of its chest. He then opened his gaping dragon mouth wide as scalding water shot out of his mouth. The water blasted through the 0-pointer's head as some of his body melted, due to the heat of his water breath. After defeating the 0-pointer, he let out a victorious screech as he stood on top of the 0-pointer's body. It then marked the end of the entrance exam. Third POV. Izuku transformed back into his human form as he jumped down from the now decapitated and half-melted 0-pointer. He rushed over to the brunette girl who had her mouth wide open as she saw everything that Izuku had done to the massive robot. Izuku looked at her amazed face and chuckled slightly. "Are you okay? Can you stand?" Izuku asked her as she was immediately snapped back from her mind. No, I can't. I think I broke my ankle." She responded as Izuku saw the bruise forming on her ankle. He then started circling his hands in a sphere-like motion as water from the air started gathering at the center and created a sphere. The girl looked in awe as well as the other students who gathered around them. Izuku then slammed his hands together and the water started spreading into his palms. What are you doing?" the girl asked. "I'm going to heal that broken ankle of yours, so that you could walk without hurting yourself," Izuku explained as he placed his palms around her broken ankle. The water started glowing as he moved his hand around the injury. When he finished, the girl was shocked when she saw that the bruise was no longer on her ankle. She stood up and felt no pain lingering on her ankle anymore. "Wow, that's so cool. Thanks, I'm Ochako Uraraka, by the way." She introduced herself as she extended her hand. Izuku took her hand and shook it. "I'm Izuku Aizawa, it's nice to meet you," he said. They then saw Recovery Girl coming towards them, and she immediately bashed Izuku's knee with her cane. "Are you trying to steal my job, Sonny?" she said to him, and he shook his head no. I was just helping her. "I'm sorry," he said as he made a perfect 90-degree bow in front of her. She told him that it was fine and that he should get going on home. He nodded and he waved goodbye to Uraraka, who waved back to him as well. He made his way outside the school and saw Hitoshi and Katsuki waiting for him. He waved them and he rushed to their side. "Where were you, babe? You were out there longer than us, you know," Katsuki asked in a worried tone. You worried about me?" "Don't worry, Kaken. I just had to heal someone since she broke her ankle pretty badly," Izuku explained as Katsuki placed his arms around him. "Ugh, get a room already, sheesh. When I get a boyfriend I'm gonna boast all about him right in front of you too," Hitoshi grumbled as he stomped his way to the train station. Katsuki clicked his teeth and Izuku let out a small giggle that sounded heavenly to Katsuki. They made their way to the train station and headed on home. Izuku and Hitoshi chilled in the living room and waited for their parents to arrive home since they went on ahead. They started talking to each other with how their exam went. "So, how did you do, Toshi?" Izuku asked as he was flipping through the channels. "I did kinda okay. I at least know that I had 50+ points. But I saw this cute guy on the exam and I saved him from a robot," Toshi mentioned as Izuku dropped the remote control to the ground. "No way, so you have a crush on him?" Izuku asked with curiosity in his eyes. "He's cute, but I'm not sure if he'll make it to UA. But if he does, then I'll try to get to know him, you know." Izuku smiled and gave him a thumbs up, and then the doorbell rang and it was Hisashi and Aizawa. Hisashi made dinner and they talked about the exam as they ate. They tried persuading the two to talk but got nothing out of them. They waited for a week and it was the longest week that they have ever experienced. With the anxiety and the anxiousness of not knowing if they passed almost broke them. The letters then arrived as they both took the letters with their names on them as they made their way to their respective rooms. Izuku took a deep breath as he opened the letter to reveal a paper inside. "Congratulations, you made it to UA. You had a score of 98% in the written portion and you earned the total amount of 80 villain points in the practical. But that's not all. There was a hidden scoring system that was mainly focused on rescuing or helping your fellow examinees. You earned a total of 67 rescue points and with both scored totaled, you earned 147 points. You are placed on Class 1A and your homeroom teacher is Shota Aizawa, the Eraserhead. Welcome to your hero academia." Signed Principal Nizu. After reading the letter, Izuku let out a triumphant scream in his room that can be heard from outside the house. He then got out of his room and knocked on Hitoshi's. Hitoshi showed his letter and he was also accepted into the hero course and was in the same class as him. They hugged each other and congratulated one another. Hisashi then came up the stairs and hugged them both also, feeling like a proud parent. Hisashi persuaded to do the same and he let out a small sigh and rolled his eyes before he joined the group hug as well. Katsuki then called that he also got in and was also in Class 1A. The next day came and both 𝗬𝗏s were standing in front of UA. They made their way inside and started to find their classroom in the big building. When they found their room, they were shocked when they were met with a gigantic door that made it look like doors of giants. When they opened the door, they were met with Katsuki arguing with the same blue-haired boy from the exam. Your feet should not be placed on top of the desk. Don't you know how disrespectful it is for the upperclassmen that once seated at this very desk? The kid said, and Katsuki just ignores him. Katsuki then saw Izuku and he waved at him, and Izuku waved back. Ida looked behind him and saw Izuku and approached him. You were that guy that turned into a dragon and saved that girl? He pointed out. I must apologize for my behavior, I am Tenya Ida. He introduced himself as he reached out his hand. Izuku grabbed his and shook it. I'm Izuku Aizawa and this is Hitoshi Aizawa. Izuku said, introducing him and Hitoshi. They then heard a girl's voice from behind them and turned to look, and it was Uraraka. You're the dragon boy. Thanks for saving me again. She told him. It's quite all right. If I want to be a hero then I should help people in need, right? Izuku said and she nodded. They then made their way to their desk and Izuku sat behind Katsuki. They talked to each other as Hitoshi occupied the seat behind Izuku. Izuku was giggling and laughing as he and Katsuki were talking with each other. Hitoshi then suddenly tugged at Izuku. What is it, Toshi? Izuku asked as Hitoshi pointed at a blonde boy with a black lightning bolt on his hair. That's the cute guy I was talking about, Hitoshi whispered as Izuku snickered. Then go talk to him later, Toshi. I'm sure he's gonna like you. Izuku encouraged his brother who nodded as a response. My big brother is finally growing up, Izuku teased as he received a head smack from him. If you're all gonna be friendly and all happy then I suggest you leave the hero course immediately, a man said and the whole class turned to see a giant caterpillar in front of the door. Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki laughed quietly as they saw Aizawa in his sleeping bag. The other students were confused to why they were laughing. Alright, it took you 10 seconds to notice me and that is very bad and a waste of time. I'm your homeroom teacher Shota Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead. Now put this PE uniforms on and head outside to the field in 5 minutes. If you're late, I'll expel you on the spot. We're going to be doing a quirk apprehension test. 33rd POV. The students were dumbfounded with Aizawa's instructions and just stood there for a while. Aizawa noticed them not moving and pinched the bridge of his nose as he sighed heavily. Do you all want to be expelled? Now change. He ordered the class and they all scrambled. They took their PE uniforms from Aizawa and headed to the locker rooms to change. The boys' and girls' locker rooms were separated. Izuku had a little trouble with his uniform and was desperately trying to put it on. Katsuki saw him and rolled his eyes. What are you? The baby? Why can't you wear the uniform properly? Katsuki asked him in an annoyed tone as he helped his boyfriend out. I just had a little bit of trouble, Izuku told him, pouting his cheeks as Katsuki helped him. Besides, I am a baby. The baby for you, Izuku teased as Katsuki had a blush on his face. Get over yourself, nerd. Katsuki growled as Izuku giggled and walked away from him. Izuku then saw Hitoshi finished changing but was surprised when he didn't left yet. He approached him and saw that he was looking at the blonde boy he called cute earlier. Dude, are you being a stalker? Izuku asked him in a teasing manner. Hitoshi jumped and looked back to see Izuku. Be quiet. I'm not stalking him. I just happened to be seeing him. He reasoned as Izuku raised his eyebrows. Wow, what a coincidence that your locker just happens to be at the other side and you're here and you just happen to be seeing him. Yeah, you need to work on your lying skills, Toshi. Izuku then saw the small tint of blush coming to his cheeks. Hitoshi then smacked his head as he huffed his way out of the locker. Izuku giggled and soon followed him with the rest of the boys as they head out to the field. Soon, everyone from class was all in the field as they saw Aizawa standing with a ball on his hand. You're all 2 minutes late, which is disappointing since you're all just wasting time, and if this was a battle and you're late, most likely everyone will be dead since every second counts. Do I make myself clear? Aizawa asked, scolding the class over their tardiness. Yes, the class responded and earned a nod from Aizawa. Now, today we're going to be doing a quirk apprehension test. Sir, aren't we supposed to be in orientation right now? Uraraka asked him and Aizawa groaned. Here at UA, the teachers are given the freedom of how they want to teach their class. And I'm the teacher, so what I say goes from now on, are we clear? They students nodded. Besides, we don't have time to go to a stupid orientation when we only have 3 years to drill as much as we can about heroics in your heads. And that orientation stuff is a waste of time. Nizu is just gonna talk about the products he used to make his fur shine and soft for 3 hours. The students sighed since they didn't want to hear about some boring speech that they didn't care about. Now, we are doing a quirk apprehension test. This is where I will evaluate your capabilities and all of that stuff. We will be doing 8 physical tests that are similar to the test that you took during middle school, only this time you get to use your quirks. He then threw a ball at Katsuki and he caught it and was a bit confused. Bakugo, since you caught the ball, I want you to throw that inside this circle here. He pointed at the red outlined circle. Use your quirk to throw that ball as far as you can. Katsuki nodded and gripped the ball tightly and threw it with his explosion that made it fly up in the air. And because of his training with Umi, his explosions became much more powerful and destructive, but with Umi's guidance, Hei's able to control them. Aizawa looked satisfied with the distance and showed it to the rest of the class. It read 1005. 2 meters. 1005. 2 meters. The whole class yelled out loud except for Izuki and Hitoshi since they expected it. Wow, we get to use our quirks. I want to try next. This looks like fun. A girl with pink skin yelled out. Yeah, this is totally gonna be cool. The blonde boy that Hitoshi had a crush on said. The 3 students, Izuku, Hitoshi, and Katsuki, immediately facepalmed themselves when they started talking about this being fun. They knew who Aizawa was and were waiting for him to say something to crush the students' spirits. Oh, you think this is fun? Aizawa asked and the class stiffened up and saw the devilish grin on his face. Since you all think this is fun, I'll make it more fun for you all. The student who will come last when the results are all shown after the test will be immediately expelled for reasons as such lacking the potential to become a hero. Aizawa announced and the class gasped. You can't do that. We just got here and don't you think it's unfair for us students to just be expelled on the first day? Uraraka told him. Do you think that natural disasters are fair? Do you think villain attacks are fair? Do you think exponential crises are fair that sometimes cities are destroyed? No, they're not. The world is full of unfairness and it is our job as heroes to combat that unfairness and make the world a better place for us people. Now, do your best and do this plus ultra style or whatever. Let's begin. He announced as he started the test. The first test was the 50-meter dash. Izuku and Katsuki were against each other. Izuku turned his arms into water and everyone was amazed by it. When Aizawa fired the gun to start the race, Katsuki propelled himself by using his explosions, while Izuku used his water arms to pull himself to the finish line by having his arms swing himself. At the end, Katsuki won with 3.67 seconds while Izuku had 4.2 seconds. Hitoshi did pretty well as he was able to cross the finish line in 5.77 seconds. But ultimately, Ito won with 3.4 seconds with his engine quirk. Next was the grip test. The winner of that test was Shoji, who had 6 arms and used them all to gain a score of 540. 0 kilograms. Izuku got third when he used his water arms to wrap around the grip test machine and got a score of 305. 1 kilogram. The person who was second was a girl who turned her hands big and earned a score of 350. 6 kilograms. The standing long jump was next and Katsuki cleared the sandbox with the use of his explosions. A boy with a laser coming out of his belly also cleared the sandbox. Next was Izuku and he twisted his water arms and made it look like a spring and used it to propel himself to the other side of the sandbox. Hitoshi also cleared the sandbox because of the leg strength he had acquired when Umi had him swim hundreds of laps in the water during their 10-month training. Next was the ball throw that everyone was waiting for. A guy stepped forward and made his body turn to steel and it added extra strength to his throw. There was a girl with black hair that made the ball smaller and made it easier for her to throw. Uraraka shocked everyone when she scored an infinity because of her zero-gravity quirk. It was then finally Izuku's turn. 𝗳𝗍𝗶 tossed the ball to Izuku and he was ready to throw it with his water arms, but he was stopped by him. I said to go all out, Izuku. And that means go all out. He told him, and Izuku looked hesitant. But you said that I must be in the circle. I won't fit if I change. He replied, and the other students were confused with what he meant. I'll give you permission, so go all out? He told him, and Izuku nodded. The students then saw Katsuki and Hitoshi take a step backwards, as well as Uraraka, since she saw his dragon from back at the entrance exam. I'd step back if I were you, Hitoshi commented as the students look at Izuku. He suddenly transformed into a water dragon as he flapped his wings and blew the students backwards. They stare at amazement as Izuku made a screech that can be heard miles away. 𝗧𝗍𝗶 then tossed the ball to Izuku, who caught it with his mouth. He then started charging up his water breath and tossed the ball into the air before he fired his high-pressured water breath that caused great wing pressures when he fired it out of his mouth. The students looked to see the ball disappear into the distance as they all had their mouths wide open except for Katsuki and Hitoshi. Hitoshi had a grin on his face as Katsuki had a proud smirk for his boyfriend. Dragon Izuku looked towards 𝗧𝗍𝗶 to hear his score, and he looked to see that his dad had a smirk on his face that was covered by his scarf. He then showed his score to the class. 3,067 meters. They shouted, shocked by the distance. Izuku then turned back into his human form with his clothes still on. Don't ask me how, just roll with it, tongue sticking out. Everyone started complimenting him and his power, and he just scratched his neck embarrassingly. Katsuki then shooed them away as he took Izuku's hands and placed him right in front of him, earning a few suspicious looks from the class. They then continued on with the other 3 tests that consisted of a distance run, seated toe touch, and sit-ups. 𝗧𝗍𝗶 then showed them the results. Since I'm tired to individually say the scores of all of you, I'm just gonna show you all the scoreboard. Izuku 𝗧𝗍𝗶 Katsuki Bakugo Shoto Todoroki Momo Yaoyorozu. Hitoshi 𝗧𝗍𝗶 Toru Hagakure. Everyone looked at the invisible girl with sympathetic looks as she was sobbing because she placed last. No one could see her tears, but they could hear her cries. The expel thing was just a ruse so that you would do your best. No one is getting expelled. 𝗧𝗍𝗶 informed them with an expressionless face. The whole class was then outraged by this. I thought it was obvious that it was all just a fake ruse. I should have said something. Momo said as the others glare at her for not telling them. Actually, you're wrong. Hitoshi spoke out as everyone turned their attention to him. Last year he expelled his entire class on the first day, and the reason was because he saw no potential in them. He is also well known in UA as the teacher who expels his class on the first day. He was totally serious about expelling one of us. The class then had a paled look on their face when their teacher was serious about expulsion. They looked down in a gloom, and Izuku couldn't help but lift their spirits up. Hey, guys, don't be so glum. We're all still here, right? That means he saw some potential in all of us in becoming heroes. Izuku said, and he saw their faces brighten up a bit. Now, get back to class and take a syllabus in my desk and read it. Now go, before I change my mind in expelling one of you. He threatened them, and they all rushed to get back to their class. 33rd POV. Everyone changed back into their uniforms after 𝗧𝗍𝗶 threatened them. Katsuki finished changing and saw Izuku struggling with his tie, and Katsuki had to go and help him again. You nerd, I told you how to do it this morning. How can you forget, dumbass? Katsuki grumbled while fixing Izuku's tie. Geez, sorry, I just forgot, and I know that you'll help me out in the end, so why bother? Izuku said back. Katsuki groaned and just fixed his tie. Izuku giggled, and it was enough to calm Katsuki down. The guys in the locker room looked at them suspiciously, like something was up between them, but they shrugged it off. They all exited the locker room and headed back to class with 𝗧𝗍𝗶 already there waiting for them. Since you all got an hour before lunch, do what you want. Just don't wake me up, he said as he zipped his sleeping bag close. Everyone went to their little groups and chatted among themselves until a girl with pink skin suggested something to the whole class. Hey guys, how about we introduced ourselves to each other? That way we get to know each other, she suggested, and everyone nodded. I'll go first then. My name is 𝗵𝗃 𝗧𝗵𝗃. My quirk is called acid. My favorite things to do are dancing. My turn. A redhead excitedly raised his hands. I'm 𝗲𝗄𝗁 Kirishima, my quirk is called hardening and I like manly things. This continued on and on until it reached a girl with orange hair and blue eyes. My name is Itsuka Kendo, my quirk is called Big Fist and my hobbies are training at our family dojo. Next was a guy with messy gray hair and weird but unique eyelashes. My name is 𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬𝗬 showing off his shark-like teeth. The next one was a girl with shoulder-length black that is shaped in a bob-like haircut. "I'm Yui Kodai. My quirk is called size." She introduced herself in a soft voice. Next was Hitoshi's crush, the blonde kid. "My name is Denki Kaminari, and my quirk is called electrification," he said in a wide grin. Coincidentally, it was Hitoshi's turn. "My name is Hitoshi Aizawa. My quirk is called brainwashing and I like to sleep," he said tiredly. It was then Katsuki's turn to introduce himself. "Katsuki Bakugo, don't forget it extras. My quirk is called explosions, and if you extras bother me, I'm gonna blow up your faces," he said in threatening manner, and the other looked scared of him. But then, they were surprised when Izuku suddenly smacked his head really hard. It made Katsuki groan due to the pain, and he held his head where Izuku smacked him. "I'm sorry about him. He's just like that, but he means no harm, I promise," Izuku explained in a calm manner while Katsuki continued to scowl. "I'm Izuku Aizawa. My quirk is called Sea Dragon. I like to play the guitar." "Wait, you're an Aizawa too, like Hitoshi. Are you like related to Aizawa-sensei?" Mina asked and was surprised to who replied. "They're my sons," Aizawa said, waking up from his nap as the whole class erupted with widened eyes and shocked expressions. "They're adopted, now scram and get to lunch." He yelled at them right before the bell rang. At lunch, the whole class sat down in a table that they claimed as their own. They talked to one another and Izuku set up Hitoshi so that he could sit with Kaminari. Izuku smiled when he saw his brother happily talking to his crush. Izuku then spent most of lunch talking with Katsuki and eating his katsudon. After the rest of the classes in the afternoon, they all went home. Izuku, Hitoshi and Katsuki boarded the same train and then parted ways after Izuku and Hitoshi reached their station. They reached their home and talked to one another. The next day arrived and so happened to be the day where their heroics class will start. Everyone was excited to know who their heroics teacher is. Suddenly, the door opened to reveal a hero that made Izuku, Katsuki, Hitoshi, and even Shoto scowl. It was All Might. "I'm here." Walking through the doors like a normal person, he announces with his signature smile on. Everyone in the class clapped for him awkwardly that made All Might sweat with nervousness. The whole class didn't like All Might that much after knowing what he did to his son 2 years ago. The class erupted in silent murmurs and whispers, talking about All Might being their teacher. Izuku loved it. How Toshinori was being silently judged by everyone. It brought him delight. All Might made a fake cough to catch everyone's attention. "Now, I will be your teacher in your heroics class. In this class, you will learn all you need to know on how to become the next generation of heroes. You will learn combat training, rescue missions, team fights, and other things that you will need to know. In our first lesson of this semester will be battle training." This made the class excited, even Izuku, who was frowning the whole time when All Might was introducing himself. "But first, if you all want to be heroes, then you need your costumes," All Might said as he pressed a button on a remote that he was holding. It then revealed a secret compartment hidden in the classroom walls that had cases with numbers on them. "Now, grab the case that is with your seat number and changed into your costumes. The support course has already finished the costume designs that you sent to the office in the beginning of your time here at UA. Change into them and meet me at ground beta." The class then took their respective cases and passed by All Might, not even looking at him. Izuku smirked when he passed by All Might as he thought how his students didn't like him as much as he wanted them to. They all changed into their hero costumes and proceeded to ground beta where they met All Might. The class looked at each other and admired one another's costume. Katsuki looked around to find Izuku, but he couldn't find him anywhere. Then he heard footsteps behind him. "Sorry I'm late, the gourd was heavier than I thought," the person said, running towards the rest of the class. They looked to see it was Izuku, and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 widened his eyes when he saw his costume. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 felt blood stream down his nose when he saw his boyfriend's costume. It exposed his lean muscled arms and perfectly toned abs. He was also carrying a gourd on his back that looked like it was filled with water. Uraraka then complimented Izuku's costume. "Wow, Izuku-kun, your costume looks good on you," she said, giving him a thumbs up. "Thanks, I like your costume too. I like the whole space theme, it matches your quirk perfectly." He complimented her back. She smiled brightly. "Thanks. It's a little bit tight, but I really like it." Izuku then walked away from her and walked towards 𝗵𝗃𝗃. "Do you like my costume?" Izuku asked while raising an eyebrow and placed his right arm on his hip. Why you look nice." 𝗵𝗃𝗃 stuttered while a blush formed on his face, and Izuku giggled at his cute reaction. "Okay then, let us begin this class." All Might called out and everyone turned to him. Ida then raised his hand to ask a question. "Sir, this is where the entrance exam was taken. Are we going to be doing an urban city battle training?" "Not quite, young Ida, we are going to be 2 steps ahead of that. As you all know, villain fights almost happens outdoors, but most villain incidents will most likely appear indoors, with hostage situations, imprisonment, confinement, and illegal backdoor dealings. Most of these situations are more likely to happen indoors. And that is today's lesson. I will split you all into pairs and then into 2 groups, heroes and villains. How will we be able to win or lose?" Momo asked. "How will we be split?" Ida then asked. "Will you expel us like Aizawa-sensei?" Uraraka asked worriedly. "Now, hold on with your questions, I don't have super hearing. To answer all of your questions, the heroes will win if they are able to capture the villains with the use of a capture tape or secure the bomb that they are guarding. The villains will win if they are able to capture the heroes in the same manner of capturing them using capture tapes, or if the heroes ran out of time. You will be split by drawing lots randomly in 2 teams, and do not worry, no one will be expelled in my class." They all then sighed in relief. "Isn't drawing lots too random, sir?" Ida asked, and Izuku answered him. "It's because we don't get to choose who we want to team up with, Ida-kun, when we are already in the battlefield. We will most likely be teamed up with heroes from other agencies or those that are unknown to us. This is very common." "I see, then that will be most certainly helpful to know," Ida replied, and Izuku smiled. "Now then, let's get on with the teams." All Might then announced all of the teams. "It's all canon except, Team C will be Monk and Jiro, Team E will be Mina and Kodai, Team F will be Tetsu and Kendo, and finally, Team G will be Kaminari and Hitoshi." Now that you are all well acquainted with your team member, I will now announce the first battle. And it will be Team A of the heroes versus Team D of the villains. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and Izuku turned to one another. Their eyes widened but soon turned into excitement as they stared each other down with smirks plastered on their faces. It was going to be a match to remember. 33rd POV. The whole class looked at the stare down that the two had. They were glaring at each other with smirk plastered on their face, and the atmosphere shifted and became intense. Ida and Uraraka were feeling the pressure of their team members. "Whoa, who do you think will win between those two?" Kirishima asked. "I don't know, bro, but it will be a manly fight." Tetsu replied with a wide smile on his face as he made his arm turn to steel. "I am quite curious on how they both are going to engage in combat." Momo mentioned. "Indeed, I am also quite eager as well," Shoto said with his monotone voice that had a small hint of excitement. "Now, everyone to the monitoring room." All Might then walked towards the monitoring room and soon followed by the rest of the class. "Now, Team A, you will be stationed outside of the building. And Team D, you will be located inside with the bomb that you must protect. You will be given 5 minutes to plan your strategies, and then when the time is up, the battle training will begin. Are we clear?" All Might asked, and they didn't ask any questions. Team D made their way inside the building and Team A waited outside. With Team D, they were on the 5th floor of the building and inside a big room with the center being occupied by a large fake bomb. Ida looked around the room and inspected the area and saw a lot of crates and steel bars scattered all over. He then saw 𝗵𝗃𝗃 standing on the door frame. "Bakugo, it is my understanding that we should formulate a plan to win this battle. Do you have any ideas?" he asked, and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 remained silent. We should start communicating now, since we only have 5 minutes and dashed. He was cut off when 𝗵𝗃𝗃 answered him by yelling. Shut up, will you? I'm trying to think, you four eyes. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 growled and Ida's sweat dropped. Well, did you thought of one? Ida asked, raising an eyebrow underneath his armor costume. I did. Now listen up, cause I don't want to repeat myself. Ida nodded and walked towards 𝗵𝗃𝗃 to hear his plan. I can't beat Izuku alone. Ida's eyes widened since 𝗵𝗃𝗃 just admitted that he won't win against Izuku. He was quite taken aback since he thought 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was the king of person who would be egotistical and arrogant, but this was a new side to him he hasn't seen before. Why would you think that? Ida asked him. It's because 4 eyes, he can just make my palms wet and it will just wipe off all of my nitroglycerin like sweat, making me not able to make my explosions, you hear? So he is a formidable opponent, I see. But we just need to take him down, but we can't hit him with punches or kicks since he could just turn his body into water and evade them. So, this is going to be the plan. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then proposed his idea to Ida and the boy agreed with it. With Team A, Izuku and Uraraka are outside the building with a map of the whole building layout. It shows that there are 5 floors and each floor was like a maze with corridors and room all over. It showed that there are many places that the enemy team could hide the bomb in. Oi, Izuku-kun, do you have a plan? Cause I was thinking that we could rush them and stuff. Uraraka suggested while leaning on a railing. We could, but I think they'll be more cautious because Kakin knows that I'm a bad matchup against him. Izuku said to her and she looked confused. Who's Kakin? And what do you mean bad matchup? Uraraka asked him. Well, Kakin is a nickname I gave him since we are childhood best friends. And he is a bad match against me because I can wipe off the sweat from his palms with my water so that he won't be able to use his quirk. Izuku explained and Uraraka nodded in understanding. So, what's our plan, Izuku-kun? Well, how about I take care of them and you find the bomb? I'll hold them off and you'll find the bomb. Sounds good. Izuku asked and Uraraka nodded. A horn then rang and marked the start of the battle training. Izuku and Uraraka climbed in one of the windows of the 2nd floor with the help of Uraraka's quirk. Izuku got in first and opened the window. He then grabbed Uraraka's hands and pulled her in as well. They then silently closed the door and walked silently as well, so that they won't be detected by the enemy team. We don't know what they are planning, so it is in our best interest that we stick together. Izuku told her and she nodded in response. Okay, we need to be careful. She whispered lowly. They continued their way to the building and saw the stairs to reach the 2nd floor. Izuku nudged at Uraraka and pointed at the stairs, to which she nodded and followed closely behind him. When they reached the 3rd floor, hell broke loose. They were met with a speeding blonde, being propelled by the sounds of his explosions. He had a wide grin and burning red eyes on his face. Uraraka, get down. Izuku told her as he dove down, bringing Uraraka with him. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then fired his explosions but was dodged by the both of them, much to his dismay. Izuku retaliated by turning his hands into water and started to reach the blonde. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 jumoed back when he saw his water tentacle changed its shape into a hand with sharp claws. He exploded the water hand with his explosions and Izuku felt pain because of the heat evaporating his water. Izuku then got up and took Uraraka's hand and pulled her up as well. You okay, Uraraka-san? Izuku asked her and she nodded. Yeah, but he came out of nowhere. She spoke out as she took a fighting stance. Back in the monitoring room, the students were observing the match very well and was shocked with 𝗵𝗃𝗃's surprise attack at the duo. Whoa, did you see that? He came out of nowhere. Kaminari pointed out. Good thing Izuku reacted fast and made Uraraka and him drop down to the ground to dodge. Hanta said as he looked at the blonde, who nodded. Hey bro, aren't you like his brother? Who do you think will win between them? Tetsu asked Hitoshi, who just shrugged. I don't know, they're both annoyingly good in battle. Only time will tell, let's just watch those crazy asshats fight to their heart's content and see who'll win. Hitoshi said as he crossed his arms around his chest. The students continued to watch and saw that things were heating up. Izuku took a fighting stance and made both his arms into water hands. He then extended them and tried grabbing 𝗵𝗃𝗃 but was dealt with by 𝗵𝗃𝗃 blowing them away from him. Izuku sneered from the burns and retracted his arms. He saw that some parts of his arms were turning back to his normal hands as patches of burned skin can be seen. He then opened the gourd from his back and started flowing some water out and healed the burns. When he was finished, they were met with another dilemma when they saw Ida speeding through the hallway in immense speed, heading straight for the two of them. Ida ran and readied his knee to kick the two out of commission. But he was blocked when Izuku's water arms started attacking him and made him stop a couple of times and depleted his original speed. He was then taken aback when Izuku's right water arm caught him and gripped his leg down tightly. He was then yanked into the air and smacked down into a wall where Izuku's hands splashed and froze him into the wall when Izuku turned his water to ice. Ida's body was now frozen into the wall. "Uraraka-san, we won't get near to the bomb anytime soon. I'll hold them off and you go find the bomb located somewhere in the building," Izuku suggested, and Uraraka looked like she didn't agree with his suggestion. "What? You're gonna hold them off on your own? I can't let you do that. Besides, I don't even have a way up since they're blocking the path," Uraraka said with burrowed eyebrows. "Then I'll make one," Izuku said, and Uraraka looked confused until Izuku punched the ceiling with his frozen water fist. "Don't worry about me, just go and find the bomb." Uraraka looked hesitant but nodded and made herself float up to the hole in the ceiling and made her way to the third floor. "Oh, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, that round face gonna get to the bomb," 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 said with a hint of annoyance in his voice. He then used his explosion to free Ida from the wall that he was frozen into. "For eyes, get back to the bomb. I'll handle the nerd," 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 told him as the engine boy nodded and was ready to run with his engine when he was grabbed by a pair of arms. "Nah, I won't let you get away from me that easily," Izuku declared as he pulled Ida again and smacked him into the wall. He then proceeded to bounce from wall to wall by coiling his water arms. He then reached 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 and grabbed him by his head with sharp claws gripping on him tightly as he threw him to the other side of the hallway. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 caught himself when he used his arms backwards to stop himself from getting blown backwards. He then stood up with his feet planted on the ground as he got his movement back. Ida then got up and was ready to try to run once again, but was stopped by Izuku once more. Ida then used the flames from his engine and burned Izuku's arms off of him. Izuku screamed in pain from the burn that Ida gave him, and he used that moment to get away from Izuku and chase after Uraraka. Izuku cursed himself from letting Ida go. He then reached his communicator to inform Uraraka of the runaway Ida. "Uraraka-san, Ida might be on your way, he got away from me. Be on high alert," Izuku informed. "Roger that," Uraraka responded as she continued her way to find the bomb. Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 had a stare down, before 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 propelled himself to Izuku. Izuku responded by shooting water ball at his opponent by using his water arms as the source. He kept swaying and flipping in the air, utilizing his Tai Chi martial arts skills to send the water ball with precise accuracy. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 exploded the water ball that got into his way as he continued his assault to Izuku. He maneuvered his body to dodge some of them until he finally reached Izuku and extended his palms to reach him. Unfortunately, he was suddenly blocked when a wave of water knocked him back. He saw that Izuku used some of his water from his blue gourd from his back to block his point-blank explosion. He also saw that Izuku was, but nevertheless, his eyes were sparkling and a smile was on his face. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 couldn't help but smile back as well as they continued to fight one another. In the monitoring room, the class was at awe in amazement with the skills and power that was displayed by the two powerhouses of their class. There were waters splashing all over the hallway, and explosions firing off from left to right. "Dude, those two are nuts," Kaminari exaggerated with his arms up in the air. "Whoa, those two are fighting like their lives depend on it. They're so cool," Mina stated as she was a jitterbug with her squealing and shaking. "I have to agree, they both are fighting incredibly well," Momo commented with a serious look on her face as she was studying curiously their moves and techniques. "I am interested in having combat with the both of them." Shoto suddenly spoke out with his monotone. "Let us not forget, class, that young Uraraka and young Ida are also engaging in battle. All Might told them as they look at the other screen to see 𝗬𝗏𝗃 getting closer to the bomb. While 𝗵𝘃𝗃 and Izuku were fighting one another, 𝗬𝗏𝗃 was getting seriously nervous for Izuku while hearing all of the explosions coming from below her. Even though the explosions gave her a rush of anxiety, she still kept trekking forward, trusting Izuku's judgments, and she promised that she won't let him down, ever. She reached the 5th floor and was slightly and ran all over the floor in search of the bomb. She then heard roaring footsteps and turned to see Iida closing in on her. She reacted fast and made herself float before she was struck by Iida's blazing kicks. She was lucky when she saw that Iida's strong kick backfired on him and he got his foot stuck in the wall. She then used her chance to get away from him and finally found the bomb. Iida cursed himself for his mishap and pulled his foot off of the wall. He looked behind him and saw 𝗬𝗏𝗃 enter the room with the bomb. He then ran with his engine and got past her, and was now blocking her from the bomb. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 then contacted Izuku. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, I found the bomb. She heard explosions coming from the other side. Capture the bomb, 𝗬𝗏𝗃. I'm starting to dry up from his explosion's heat and I'm running out of moisture and water. Izuku informed her and she nodded vigorously with determination. She made herself float once more and propelled herself towards the bomb by using the walls as her kicking pad. She almost reached the bomb, but it got away from her when Iida pushed the bomb to another side of the room. I'm not letting you touch this bomb. Bakugo trusted me with this bomb and I'm not letting him down. Iida said in resolve as he readied his engines. Well, I'm not letting Izuku down either. She yelled out as she boosted herself towards the bomb once again. Iida did the same and moved the bomb in lightning speed. They both played a game of cat and mouse. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 then saw the steel bars and crates all over the room and decided to make use of them. She started touching them all and felt her stomach swirling inside of her as she was ready to puke out rainbows. She held herself together before she started hurling the weightless objects at the armored hero in training. Take this, Iida-kun, she stated before she threw all of the objects towards him. Release, she said out loud before the crates and steel bars regained their center of gravity and started to fall to the ground. Iida panicked as he saw that his pathways were blocked by the objects and they started to drop on top of him. He yelped when he felt the objects drop on top of him and held him in place. He struggled to let loose but suddenly saw 𝗬𝗏𝗃 floating towards the bomb, looking all green. I got it. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 screamed from the top of her lungs as she hugged the bomb tightly with her body. The heroes win, All Might announced in the intercoms as it marked the end of their battle. 33rd POV. Moments before 𝗬𝗏𝗃 touched the bomb, 𝗵𝘃𝗃 and Izuku continued their heated battle against one another. 𝗵𝘃𝗃's palms were filled with blisters and burns from his explosions. His body was also decorated with bruises and cuts from Izuku's water hands, with Izuku freezing the fingers into points, making a claw. Izuku suffered a lot of damage and injuries as well, courtesy of 𝗵𝘃𝗃 of course. He was profusely and he can barely stand up. He can barely turn his arms into water as they are covered with burns from 𝗵𝘃𝗃's explosions. His water-filled gourd, that almost has 2 gallons of water, is almost used up and he has a little to none left. Izuku ran towards 𝗵𝘃𝗃 with his water arms and used his Tai Chi martial skills to good use. He swayed his arms left and right while 𝗵𝘃𝗃 dodges them by flipping in the air and jumping back. Izuku then his right arm towards 𝗵𝘃𝗃 with the tip in a frozen point as 𝗵𝘃𝗃 barely dodges and it grazes his left cheek. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 retaliated with him launching himself with his explosions and connected his foot in Izuku's abdomen. He was pushed back but then got up until he heard 𝗬𝗏𝗃 from his communicator. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, I found the bomb, she said to him through the communicator. Izuku dodges an explosion from 𝗵𝘃𝗃 and rolled to the side and fired off water ball that turned into ice and smashed themselves into 𝗵𝘃𝗃. He then talked to 𝗬𝗏𝗃 through the communicator. Capture the bomb, 𝗬𝗏𝗃. I'm starting to dry up from his explosion's heat and I'm running out of moisture and water. Izuku informed her and she nodded vigorously with determination. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 overheard him talk to 𝗬𝗏𝗃 and his eyes widened when he came to the realization that she found the bomb's location. He gritted his teeth in frustration. Damn it. Round Face already found the bomb. I hope Four Eyes will take care of her. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 said to himself, trying to reassure himself that his teammate will handle the enemy. He turned to Izuku and saw him clearly exhausted, but he could say the same thing to himself as his sweat was dripping down from his forehead. He was thinking of using 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 explosion, but the attack could seriously harm, or even kill Izuku, so that plan was off the table. You know what, Izuku? Let's just end this. Katsuki declared as he saw the ocean-eyed boy smile widely. Yes, let us end this, he announced. Izuku then started swaying and moving his arms, almost like he was dancing. Katsuki then realized what he was doing and saw what was left of the water in 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 flow into him and absorb them in his body. He then saw the water in the air flow into him, being absorbed as well. He looked at Izuku and saw him smirking. His water arms then started to divide into two and made him look like he had 4 arms. Katsuki felt excited as he launched himself towards his enemy with explosions behind him. Izuku did the same as he started running and used his 4 arms to attack Katsuki. His Tai Chi was proven fruitful when his attacks hit him successfully, and they packed quite a punch. Katsuki didn't give up, but was instead even more driven to defeat Izuku. He used his explosions and exploded the water arms that came his way. When one grabbed him by his ankle, he exploded it and he saw Izuku winced in pain from the burn. Katsuki kept attacking with his explosions and soon the extra arms evaporated due to the heat. They stood on opposite sides, heavily, and were about to attack once more until they heard All Might in the intercoms. Heroes win, he announces, and Izuku had a smile on his face. 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 did it? Izuku shouted as he fell onto his 4s and laid on his back. Katsuki sighed that they lost. He was mad, but he knew not to pass on the blame to Iida since they both were at fault. Katsuki walked to Izuku and gave him a hand up. They then made their way back to the monitoring room, meeting their teammates on the way. 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 and Izuku high-fived, and Iida apologized to Katsuki, to which, surprising the boy, he told him that it wasn't all his fault. When the doors opened, they were bombarded with cheers and excitement. They were being questioned a lot and were complimented by their skills and strengths. All Might then made a fake cough to catch everyone's attention. Now, class, who do you think is the MVP of the match? He asked, and Momo answered. It is in my honest opinion that Izuku should be the one to have the MVP title. Not only was he able to create a pathway for 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 to reach the bomb, he also gave her time to locate the object by distracting his opponents in combat. He was able to hold off Iida a couple of minutes before he escaped his grasp. He was also able to hold off on his own when he battled Bakugo, even though he has a major weakness against heats and fires. All Might sweated with her detailed analysis as she stole all of the words that All Might was about to say. On the other hand, everyone was impressed with her knowledge and analyzing skills. That is correct, young Yaoyorozu. Now off to the next matches. All Might stuttered as he changed the topic by announcing the next battle. The next battles were all interesting. Hitoshi and Kaminari won their match because Hitoshi brainwashed both of their opponents and binded them with his purple capture bands. Kaminari then shocked them unconscious, and all that they had to do was find the bomb, to which they did. Kaminari wooed in joy as he jumped in Hitoshi's embrace that made the purple hair flustered and blush profusely as his cheeks were tinted pink. Kaminari then realized what he did and got himself down from Hitoshi and blushed as well. Hitoshi then patted the blonde that made him fluster even more. This is his costume, credits to the artist. Just imagine his band's purple, tongue sticking out. Soon, the matches all ended and they were now all outside the monitoring room and in the streets of Ground Beta. All Might was about to say his final words to class. Now, I hope you all learned about teamwork and planning in this lesson. Remember what you all have learned today about indoor battles. Now I'm going to show you how a pro hero exits. He then ran in superhuman speed away from Ground Beta and the class. I don't think All Might knows how to teach Kero. Tsuyu commented, and everyone started giggling at her bluntness. Soon, the class also left Ground Beta and headed to their locker rooms and changed into their uniforms. Katsuki grumbled when he was fixing Izuku's tie again, but he soon was soothed by Izuku's cute giggles that made him sigh and blush. There was also a development between Hitoshi and Kaminari as they talked to each other while changing. Apparently, he coincidentally sought him again and engaged a conversation with the blonde boy. They were laughing and Hitoshi gave a small smile which was extremely rare to see, and Izuku just had to snap a pic. When Izuku and Katsuki reached back to their classroom, they saw that most of their classmates were still there and immediately approached them with stars in their eyes. Both of them looked confused as Mina asked them a question that made her really excited. "Okay, you two better spill, are you two dating?" She asked as the others widened their eyes and was waiting for one of them to respond. Katsuki and Izuku looked shocked. Izuku looked at Katsuki as he wanted to reveal their relationship, and to his surprise he nodded. Izuku took a deep breath and faced his classmates. "We are dating," he announces as the girls squealed and the guys nodded. "I knew it. My love sensors never fail me," Mina stated as she placed her thumb on her chest. "Wait, you extras knew?" Katsuki questioned, and almost immediately, the whole class nodded. "You two were being very obvious when you two were giggling and smiling at each other," 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 commented with an awkward smile, with the memory of the two of them being very obvious. "Let's not forget the fact that you two were flirting with each other in the locker room when we're changing," Hanta pointed out as the guys let out a small chuckle. "You guys don't mind of us being gay?" Izuku asked with sad puppy eyes. The class immediately cooed at his puppy-like side. They then shook their heads no and showed that they didn't mind their relationship at all. "Dude, it's like whatever now with the whole gay relationship thing. So no sweat, we don't judge you," Toru exclaimed with her uniform sleeved high in the air, as she was putting her invisible arms up. "I agree, we don't have the right to judge your love at all. All we can do is support you, and that is what we are planning," Momo said sweetly and in a motherly tone. Izuku teared up a bit and wiped a single tear that escaped his eye. He then thanked them by bowing, but Katsuki didn't want to bow, but he was forced when Izuku made him by placing his hand behind his head and made him bow. The class erupted in a laughter as they saw that Katsuki was whipped by Izuku. The girls then asked a couple of questions about their relationship and Izuku awkwardly answered them all. In the end, they were accepted and the whole class left to go home. The couple was happy that they were accepted, but soon Izuku's happiness will be replaced with boiling rage when he was suddenly called by Nizu to report to his office. There he saw a girl that made his blood boil with anger. Third POV, Izuku, Katsuki, and Hitoshi were all leaving the classroom. After the class announced their acceptance about Izuku and Katsuki's relationship, they were held back by questions everyone bombarded to them. They tried their best to answer all of their questions. Well, more like Izuku was the one answering the questions. He had to held Katsuki down since he was threatening the class that he'll blow them up if they keep asking questions. Izuku had to punch the back of his head if he was about to use his quirks on them. Katsuki then just grumbled to himself as he didn't want his Izuku to be angry with him again. So he just whispered profanities to himself. After the cue and a portion ended, the class headed out, leaving only Izuku, Katsuki, and Hitoshi. Izuku approached Hitoshi and asked him about his time with Kaminari. "Oi, big bro, how was your time with Kaminari?" Izuku said in a teasing voice while moving his eyebrows. "Shut up, but he did tell me that he was gay," Hitoshi mentioned as he scratched the back of his neck. "Dude, that's a score. That totally means that he's into you," Izuku said as he playfully punched his brother's shoulder. Yeah, I'm gonna try and talk to him tomorrow." Izuku then gave a smile to his brother. Katsuki then called over the two since he was waiting for them. The two approached him and Izuku immediately interlocked their hands together as Hitoshi grumbled at the back. They were about to leave the classroom when suddenly, Nizu called for them through the school's intercoms. "May I request the attentions of Izuku and Hitoshi Aizawa, as well as Katsuki Bakugo. Please proceed to the principal's office. Thank you very much." "What does Principal Nizu want with us?" Izuku asked as Hitoshi shrugged, not knowing as well. "Let's just go there and be done with what the rat wants. I wanna go home." Katsuki grumbled as Izuku smacked his head again. "Kaken, language," Izuku said as he let go of his hand and walked off alone with a pout on his bottom lip, not looking at Katsuki. Katsuki groaned as he caught up with Izuku. "Okay, sorry, I'll keep my mouth shut," Katsuki said as Izuku patted his head. "Good, now let's go to Principal Nizu's office," he said as he interlocked his hands with Katsuki again. Meanwhile, Hitoshi, who saw everything, pinched the bridge of his nose as he followed them. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗶𝗃𝗀. They made their way to 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃's office as they knocked on the door. They heard a come in from inside and they opened the door and was shocked to see that there were other people there. They could see that 𝗳𝗍𝗂 and Hizashi were there and a family was there as well. A family that he does not want ever to see again. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃, Izumi said as the three entered the door. Can someone please explain why this family from hell is here? I don't recall sacrificing someone for them to be summoned here. Izuku said as suppressed laughter can be heard from Hitoshi and Katsuki. That is not a funny joke, Izuku, Inko said, scolding the boy. I don't recall telling it as a joke, I was telling it as a fact. The tension rises in the room as 𝗵𝗃𝗁 made a fake cough to catch everyone's attention. Izuku, we called you all here since Izumi will be attending school from here on out? 𝗵𝗃𝗁 said with an annoyed voice and seeping venom. What? No, I thought you said that Izumi will have the chance of a snail to get to attend here. Why is she now able to attend? Izuku said, demanding an explanation. It is because the Hero Commission forced me to make do with Ms. Yagi's enrollment here in UA. Actually, it's because All Might threatened them to reveal the secrets of the Hero Commission to the public, and for him to shut up is for Izumi to attend MY school. 𝗵𝗃𝗁 informed them as he was visibly angered by this. Getting desperate, I see. Well, whatever, she better not be in the same class as me. Izuku said as he looked at 𝗵𝗃𝗁 and his dads, and they hung their heads low. I'm sorry, Izuku, but Izumi will be attending in class 1A, 𝗵𝗃𝗁 said in a defeated voice as he sighed deeply. Izuku was visibly shaking with rage. He could feel his blood boil at the thought of her being his classmate again. All the trauma and hardship she put Izuku through was coming back to him and rage is overtaking. I'm not letting this happen. I finally get to get away from that she-demon and I'm not going to let her ruin my life again. Izuku screamed in a fury as his eyes turned a deeper blue. Whatever, Izuku, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And I will take Katsuki back. Izumi announces as Izuku falls into a deeper rage. Izuku then turned his right arm into water as he grabbed her by her throat and made the tips of his water claw freeze into a sharp ice. Izumi struggled to break free, but it was all fruitless as Izuku had a full grasp on her. Listen here, Beach. You could stay in this school for all I care, cause in the end you will never ever beat me. And you can never have 𝗂𝗂𝗃 because he would never date a scum and lowlife like you. A beach and where like you could only dream of having someone as amazing as 𝗂𝗂𝗃. You don't deserve him. He then threw her to the side as she crashed into a shelf. Izuku then walked out of the room while grabbing Katsuki's hand. Hitoshi soon followed along with Hizashi and 𝗳𝗍𝗂, who wanted to check on Izuku. As Izuku walked out with Katsuki, hot tears dripped down from his eyes as Katsuki took notice of this. Hey, Izu, stop crying. If you're worried about that beach having me, then you're dead wrong, okay? Katsuki said as he pulled Izuku into his chest. I just thought that I'm now finally away from that demon, but now she's back again, and I don't know what to do. She even said she's going to steal you from me. Izuku said as he sobbed into Katsuki's chest. Well, too bad for that beach, 'cause I'm here with you and I'm not going anywhere else. You hear that? Katsuki then tightly hugged his boyfriend, trying his best to comfort him. Eventually, the rest of the 𝗳𝗍𝗂s caught up to them and saw Izuku's crying state. They all comforted him as well as 𝗳𝗍𝗂, surprisingly hugged Izuku tightly under his embrace. He even kissed him in his forehead and told him that everything was going to be okay. Izuku then felt the warmth of 𝗳𝗍𝗂's body as he snuggled closer to him. He felt the fatigue and exhaustion from all the activities that happened today catch up to him as he slowly closed his eyes out of tiredness. 𝗳𝗍𝗂 then heard the faint sounds of snoring as he looked to see that Izuku fell asleep. He carried him in his back as he told the others that they are going home to rest. They nodded as they exited the school and got inside their car that was parked outside. They dropped off Katsuki by his house as he kissed his sleeping boyfriend's forehead before exiting the car. He waved goodbye to them as they drove away. Worry and sadness is what he felt for Izuku as he opened the door to his house. The 𝗳𝗍𝗂s returned to their two-story family home. Izuku was still fast asleep when they arrived, so Shota carried him inside their house. He got upstairs and placed his problem child on his bed and tucked him in with his blanket. He then exited his room and was met with worried faces from his husband and his other problem child. Is he going to be okay? Hitoshi asked with a worried tone in his voice. He will be tomorrow. We will have to just try our best to make sure that he's okay. Izawa said to them. Why does that beach have to ruin everything? Izuku is finally getting better and she just waltzed in and got a spot in the hero course. He even told Izuku that she's gonna steal Katsuki away from him. Hitoshi said out loud in frustration. I agree, but we can't do anything about that. Let's just rest now, little listener, and deal with this tomorrow, yeah. Hisashi said, trying to calm down his son. Hitoshi, still feeling angered and frustrated with events that took place, stomped his way to his room with fury as he slammed the door of his bedroom loudly. Izawa groaned as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Everything's gonna be okay, Sho, I just know it, Hisashi said as he hugged his husband tightly. Izawa hugged back and placed his head on the blonde's shoulder. Why does this have to keep happening to Izuku? I just want him to be happy for once, he said as hugged Hisashi tightly. We can't control the world, Sho, but I know that Izuku will rise up to the top and surpass this. This will be just a bump in the road, don't you worry, Hisashi said as he rubbed circles on Izawa's back, trying to calm him down. Thanks, now I need a gallon of black coffee to get through this night's patrol. Izawa groaned as Hisashi giggled lightly. I'll brew you a gallon then, Hisashi said as he made his way downstairs. Izawa told him, thanks, as he followed him. He looked at Izuku's bedroom door again and touched it with his hands. Everything's gonna be alright, Izuku, you'll get through this, he said before he got downstairs. Unbeknownst to them, Izuku was wide awake and heard everything they said through the door. He cried softly, barely audible, as he hugged his knees to his chest with the door behind him. I have them, they're different from my previous family. They love me and cared for me, and if they say I can surpass this then I will, Izuku thought with heart-filled determination. He was not going to be brought back down by the Yagis. He was not gonna let Izumi trample him once again like she did in the past. He was no longer Izuku Yagi, the helpless and useless boy, no. He was now Izuku Izawa, a person that surpasses any hardships and is much more stronger and powerful than he once was. He has now a family that actually loves him, friends that accepted him and his shortcomings, and he has a boyfriend that will love him no matter what. He is not gonna let anything bring him down. Third POV. It was now the next day and Izuku feels refreshed after a night of sobbing and crying. He decided that Izumi was no longer gonna affect him and he's going to prove her wrong. He was awoken by the sound of his alarm that he grudgingly turned off as he still felt sleepy. He rolled around on his bed and looked at the clock. It was an hour and a half before class and he got up and did a few stretches. He opened his door and was met with the smell of delicious pancakes. He got down the stairs and saw that Hitoshi and Shoto were sitting down on the dining table, while Hisashi was making the pancakes. He saw that his brother and dad were drinking a cup of black coffee that Hisashi brewed for them since they both can't function well without their coffee. He sat down on his chair and everyone looked at him. Why are you all looking at me? He asked confusingly as they all blinked in disbelief. Seriously? You just had an emotional breakdown yesterday and you asked us why we're looking at you. Hitoshi said in a slightly annoyed voice. He's right, little listener. Are you okay now? We're just a little worried, you know. Hisashi said with concern and worry. I'm fine now, Papa. I'll just have to go and deal with that she-demon, and not let her affect me again, he declared as a gentle smile appeared on Hisashi's face as he ruffled his blue hair. Good, now eat up, little listener, you have school in an hour, Hisashi told him as he slid a plate of fluffy pancakes. He began eating his pancakes until his dad said something that caught his attention. Don't worry about Izumi because one of Nizu's conditions in accepting her into the hero course is that if she does one mistake she is going to be transferred to the general class, Izawa informed him as he sipped his black coffee. That's good to know, Izuku said as he grinned widely like how Shoto would grin. The others shivered when they saw him smiling like that. They all knew well that he was plotting something. Both Hitoshi and Izuku finished their breakfast and headed upstairs to change into their uniforms. Izuku got done first and headed downstairs since Hitoshi had to put his capture bands in his arms first. They were greeted by a tired Shota as he threatened to leave them behind if they were late. They got inside their car as Hizashi drove all the way to UA. Hitoshi kept talking to Izuku about Kaminari in a whisper voice since he didn't want their parents to overhear. Shota was asleep the whole time as he had a very tiring patrol late last night. They got to UA and were about to head inside when suddenly, they were met with dozens of news reporters that wanted a word with All Might's teaching capabilities and how he was as a teacher. The students, along with Izuku and Hitoshi, were annoyed and overwhelmed by then until they were able to last them with the help of Shota and Hizashi. The students then passed the media through the UA gates as a suddenly wall blocked all of the entrances. The students sighed in relief while the reporters were and annoyed. Izuku and Hitoshi arrived at their classroom, and Izuku saw Katsuki talking to Kirishima and Tetsu. He looked annoyed and was yelling at them to leave him alone. The other two didn't listen and continued to talk to him. Izuku approached them and greeted the two of them. He then greeted Katsuki with a kiss in his forehead. Katsuki looked a bit worried for Izuku, but his worries washed away when he saw Izuku smiling cutely. He just smiled as well as he conversed with his boyfriend and the other two males who stuck around. Their conversation was immediately halted when Aizawa got inside the room. All of the class rushed back to their seats and immediately kept quiet, not wanting to PSS their teacher off and be expelled. "Okay class, we have a new student that's gonna join us." Aizawa grumbled as the class erupted in questions. "Shut up. Just get in here and introduce yourself and be done with it," Aizawa said in a kind of pissy and annoyed mood. The class turned to the door as the new student walked in. Izuku, Katsuki, and Hitoshi didn't even bat an eyelash at her as she walked through the door. The class gasped when they saw her since they recognized her from the news 2 years ago. Shota wasn't amused at all and had a disgusting frown on his face. "I'm the new student, Izumi Yagi. My quirk is telekinesis." Izumi introduced herself as she walked down the platform and to her chair that was behind Momo. "Now that is over, I need you all as a class to vote for a class representative and vice class representative. I don't care how you do it, but I need 2 names before lunch or I'll expel all of you. Now don't disturb me." Aizawa finished as he zipped into his sleeping bag and instantly falls asleep. The class then turned chaotic as they argued with one another on who is to become as class representative. "Me. Pick me. I totally want to be class rep," Mina shouted while pointing at herself. "No way. Pick me. I'm going to be the manliest class rep," Kirishima said raising his hands. "Dude, I'm going to be the manliest class rep ever," Tetsu exclaimed as he was also raising both of his hands. "Everyone be quiet," Ida said raising his voice as everyone turned to him. "We should sow this democratically and vote for the person that we all think is better suited to be class representative. This is such an honor title and they will represent us as a whole." Ida finished his opinion as everyone started agreeing with his logic. "But how do we know who to vote for? Aren't we just gonna vote for ourselves, Karo?" Sue said as she placed her finger on her lips. "But whoever does have the highest vote proves that they are the most trusted, isn't it not?" Izuku spoke out as everyone nodded in agreement. The class then decided to do the voting. Momo kindly created a tally box as the class dropped a piece of paper with the name of the person they voted for. Ida tallied all the votes and showed who won and be named as the class representative and vice class representative. So, the scores show as Izuku won with 6 votes and is now the class representative. Izuku then had his mouth wide open in shock as everyone clapped for him, almost everyone. And the vice class representative with 3 votes is Yaoyorozu-san. Everyone then clapped for her as well. Now, a speech for the 2 elected officers. Izuku and Momo then got up the platform to say a few words as everyone clapped for them again and cheered. "Well, I don't know if I'll be any good at being class representative, but I'll do my best and won't fail you all," Izuki said as he bowed and roaring cheers and claps can be heard. "I'll gladly accept this responsibility and would do my absolute best not to disappoint you all and would help out class representative with any council work," Momo said with a sweet smile as she bowed as well, and the class showered her with cheers as well. Aizawa then wrote their names as the new representatives for Class 1A. It was also time for lunch as the class exited their classroom and headed for the cafeteria to eat one of Lunch Rush's meals. Izuku, Katsuki, and Hitoshi sat on their usual spots, but were surprised when others joined them. Shoto, Momo, Mina, Tetsu, Kirishima, Kaminari, Siro, and Jiro asked for permission. Aro joined them at their table. Katsuki was about to protest when he was hit in the head by Izuku before he muttered a word. Izuku told them that his was perfectly fine and they sat down to join them for lunch. I'm not sure about being class rep, you guys. I don't know if I can't do it. Izuku suddenly said as everyone told him otherwise. What are you saying, nerd? You're totally up for being class rep. Don't degrade yourself and what you can do. Katsuki grumbled in the sweetest way possible as he slurped his extra spicy ramen. I agree with Bakugo, Izuku. I think you will do a fantastic job. I even voted for you. Momo said as she elegantly ate her meal. Yeah dude, you'll totally kill it being class rep. I mean, you could tame Bakugo, who's the most rowdiest and rudest person I've ever met. And if you can tame him, then you could totally lead our class. Jiro commented as Katsuki looked furious. What did you sat ears? Katsuki shouted as the whole table erupted in laughter, but all good ended when someone approached them. Katsuki, would you like to eat lunch with me? A person questioned as they look up to see who it was, and it was Izumi. No thanks, I'm good. Now get out of here, you're ruining my ramen with that fake smile of yours. Katsuki told her off as the table snickered slightly. Katsuki then placed his arms around Izuku's shoulder to show him off. Izuku grinned and held Katsuki's arm that he wrapped around his shoulders. He then laid his head on his shoulders as he had a smug look on his face. Izumi was not pleased with this. Oh come on, why would you choose that Deku over me? Why won't you just hang out with me and be normal for once and not be with this 𝗵𝗃𝗲? She blurted out angrily as she slammed her hands on their table. Everyone in the cafeteria heard her words as they gasped and had looks of disgust. She couldn't be bothered for what others think of her as she only had one goal in mind, and that is to have Katsuki. Mina was furious with her hurtful words that she has said to her friends. Hey, that is uncalled for. You don't have the right to say that. She told her with scowling face. Izumi turned to her and scoffed. Oh, shut up, Pinky. Why don't you go back to whatever planet you came from and shut up? She told her as Mina felt really hurt as tears started forming in her eyes. She sat back down and Kirishima hugged her tightly in his embrace. He knew very well how insecure Mina was about her looks since they were middle school classmates. Kirishima felt furious with Izumi for hurting Mina. Dude, that is so unmanly of you. You can't just say that to people. You hurt her feelings. Kirishima said while still hugging the sobbing Mina. You know what else is unmanly? Those shark teeth of yours. Seriously, go back to the ocean and swim with the sharks, you'll fit in very well. Izumi chuckled as Kirishima was struck by her words. Okay, now that is enough. That's the last straw. You are going too far with your words of insults. Get out of here before I make you. Momo suddenly said as she stood up from her seat. Big words coming from you, little Miss Princess. Fake pretty girls like you need to shut up. Izumi shouted at Momo's face until Izuku had enough. He suddenly slammed the table very loudly and forcefully as it made a small crack on the table that shocked everyone in the cafeteria. Listen here, Izumi, I'm not going to let you belittle and degrade my friends that I care for so much anymore. They're much more better than you in every aspect. They are kind, accepting, and appealing and handsome on their own way, and you don't get to judge them for that. You can judge me all you want, but you won't ever get the pleasure of doing that with my friends. And who are you to judge? With all of that heavy makeup on your face, seriously, you might want to eat some of that makeup since they're useless to put on your face to make yourself look prettier, 'cause you're DMN ugly either way. Maybe eating them would be a better use for you, to make your personality prettier. And don't get me started with those fake bub and butt of yours. How much money did Daddy give you to put those plastic in your body? The table then started holding their laughter as they saw Izumi's speechless face. The whole cafeteria said a bunch of ohs and yikes as they also held their laughter. Why don't you leave us alone and be on your way? I want to finish my lunch with my boyfriend and with my friends in peace. Izuku said as Izumi looked angered as she gritted her teeth, clenched her fist. She was about to storm off when Izuku added something. "Oh, Izumi, don't get too angry or the plastics from your bub and butt are gonna melt off." Their table laughed out loud as the whole cafeteria snickered. "Oi, you might want some ice for those burns you got there," Shoto suddenly said with a smug smile as he made some ice from his right side. Momo then created an ice bag using her quirk to take Shoto's joke even further. The table then laughed out loud, not even trying to hold their laughter as Izumi walked out of the cafeteria in a fuming rage. The cafeteria then clapped for Izuku as he defended his classmates from Izumi's insults and also clapped for him and his sick nasty burns. He happily accepted them as he took a bow and waved as he sat back down. "Izuku, that was badass," Jiro said with a big smile on her face. "Yeah dude, you completely annihilated her," Siro said as he gave Izuku a high five. "That was the most manliest thing I have ever seen," Tetsu said as manly tears dripped from his eyes. "And I got it all on video," Hitoshi said as a 𝗳𝗍𝗍 grin appeared on his face. "Hito, you gotta send that to me," Kaminari said to Hitoshi as he nodded and sent him a copy. "Thanks for defending us, Izuku, we really gotta hand it to you," Mina said with a genuine smile. "No worries guys. No one's gonna insult my friends and gets away with it. I'm gonna pummel them to the ground if they ever hurt any of you," Izuku declared as everyone had sparkling eyes and said thank you and other stuff to him. Katsuki suddenly kissed Izuku in his cheeks as he suddenly turned red. "That's my nerd," he said proudly, and their friends awed at their cuteness. They were about to continue with their meals until suddenly, the UA alarm system rang all across the cafeteria. The students then all started panicking at the sudden emergency.